I'd like to call to order the August 7, 2012 regular meeting of the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners. I would invite you to stand if you would like to. We have with us tonight to provide the invocation, and then following that, the Pledge of Allegiance, is recently retired firefighter Damon Carlock after 22 years. Served as a chaplain for many of those years, and Commissioner Hill has invited him to provide the invocation and the pledge for us tonight.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would say before I say the prayer that it's been a privilege and honor to work for the city and for the fire department. As the commissioner said a while ago, I hope we made a difference, and I think we did in many cases. So, all those that will bow their head, we'll have prayer. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, we come today, we want to thank you so much for the blessings of this day, Lord. We thank you for the good sunshine you brought our way, Lord. We thank you so much for the ones that have gathered here. We pray, Lord, that your will be done in this meeting, Lord. And we pray, Lord, that everything will be said and done according to thy will. We pray, Lord, that you'll be with each and every one of us, Lord, as we go through the rest of this week and the rest of this meeting, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you'll keep us safe, and the ones that are on duty, the men and women and the police and fire, that they will keep them safe during these hours. Forgive us of our sins, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you'll just be with our nation, Lord, and the things that we must endure and go forward. Help us to be a follower of you and not of this world. Forgive us where we let you down, Lord. And Lord, we know you know every need for every one of us, Lord. We pray you'll supply that need. In Jesus' name we ask. Amen.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you for your service. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Waltrip?
Here.
Commissioner Denning?
Here.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Commissioner Nash?
Here.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Here. Do we have any awards or recognitions tonight?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to acknowledge the Finance Department, Jeff Meisel and the employees. They received a certificate of achievement for their annual popular financial statement. I think you find it downstairs on the end table. And Jeff and his employees scored very well, and they got noted by the GFOA.
Good job. Thank you so much. Appreciate the work.
We're going to continue with those. I think you all liked it pretty well. It's easy to read, easy to understand. It's colorful. It's a lot more interesting than that big, thick thing we give you every year. So we'll continue with that. Thank you.
Mr. Nash, did you want to mention something about swimming? Is that correct?
I absolutely do. It is not often that Bowling Green gets so prominently displayed on an international stage. But I know everybody in the room probably already knows, but as a former swimmer from Western Kentucky University, Bowling Green could not be more proud of Claire Donahue and the work that she's done, not only to represent Bowling Green and Western Kentucky University, but also in her representation of the United States of America on the world stage at the 2012 Olympics. So congratulations to Claire.
For a gold medal.
For a gold medal, that's right. Not only did she swim in the 100 fly and received just outside of the medals, but she also swam a leg of the medley relay in the prelims, which allowed her to qualify for a gold medal when the team finally finished first in the finals that were held there as well. So it's quite an honor for her.
Thank you. Congratulations to her. Anyone else? Mr. DeFebo, do you have any city manager comments tonight?
I do, Mayor. There'll be a need for an executive session. Kate will read the reason.
Pursuant to KRS 61810F, discussions which might lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an individual employee without restricting that employee's right to a public hearing if requested. This exception shall not be interpreted to permit discussions of general personnel matters in secret.
So moved.
Motion by Waltrip, second by Nash. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Need a motion for approval of minutes from the July 17th, 2012 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill and second by Waltrip. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Now have time for public comments. If anyone in the audience would like to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda, we'd invite you to step forward to the microphone at this time. Seeing no one, we'll begin our regular agenda. First item is ordinance 2012-23, second reading.
Ordinance closing a public right-of-way. Ordinance approving the closing of an alley adjacent to Old 6th Avenue and bounded by 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue, Kentucky Street, and Center Street.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Denning, second by Nash. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Second reading of ordinance 2012-24.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 1.33 acres from PUD Planned Unit Development and LI Light Industry to HB Highway Business located between 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue, Kentucky Street, and Center Street, presently owned by Sanderford Properties, Incorporated.
So moved.
Motion by Nash, second by Hill. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Second reading of ordinance 2012-25.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 6.505 acres from LI Light Industry to HI Heavy Industry, located at 1412 Memphis Junction Road, presently owned by SML Properties, LLC.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Hill and second by Nash. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Second reading of ordinance 2012-26.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning a tract of land containing 3.176 acres from P Public F Floodplain and LI Light Industry to LI Light Industry and F Floodplain, located at 2325 Airway Court, presently owned by Bowling Green Warren County Regional Airport Board, with KY Corps LLC as contract vendee.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Hill and second by Nash. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Second reading of ordinance 2012-28.
Ordinance relating to budget amendment. Ordinance approving amendment number 5 to the City of Bowling Green, Kentucky annual operating budget for fiscal year 2012.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Hill. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Second reading of ordinance 2012-29.
Ordinance amending Code of Ordinances. Ordinance amending Chapter 21, Streets and Sidewalks of the City of Bowling Green Code of Ordinances to make changes related to right-of-way obstructions, stormwater, and street cuts.
So moved.
Motion by Hill and second by Nash. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. And second reading of ordinance 2012-30.
Ordinance amending Code of Ordinances. Ordinance amending Chapter 22, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the City of Bowling Green Code of Ordinances related to on-street parking.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Denning and second by Nash. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. And that concludes our second readings that we had, which all those ordinances were thoroughly discussed, both the work session and our regular meeting. So now we'll continue with the fresh items. Municipal Order 2012-144.
Municipal order approving the reappointment of Thomas Richards and appointment of Julie Huntsman to the Board of Park Commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nash and second by Hill. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-145.
Municipal order approving the probationary appointments of Andre A. Creek, Ricky E. Cross, Sean M. Johnson, and Keith W. Young to the position of police officer in the police department.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Denning. Mr. Febo.
We're here tonight to ask your approval to appoint 4 new officers. It's often been said here that becoming a police officer or fireman's a difficult process. To give you some idea, we had 142 people apply. Of that, 107 decided to show up for the test. And of that, 60 passed the test. One was already pre-certified. 41 took the fitness test. 37 passed that. 20 took the polygraph and psychological, and from that we interviewed a cadre of 11 individuals, of which these 4 persons recommended for employment. Michael, were they here? Okay, I believe all the incumbents are here.
I invite you to stand so we can display you for the crowd at home. Thank y'all for coming. Congratulations. Is any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Congratulations. Thank you. Municipal Order 2012-146.
Municipal order approving the probationary appointments of Andrew J. Embry and Brian K. Fulton to the position of firefighter in the fire department.
Second.
Motion by Nash and second by Waltrip. Mr. Febo.
We're here to ask your approval to appoint 2 new firefighters. Only thing more difficult in becoming a police officer in our city is becoming a firefighter. We had 268 applicants for these positions. 226 had to go through a pre-physical training, a practice training. Then 142 took a written and test and a physical fitness test. 85 passed the written, 68 passed the fitness test. Greg and his department did orals and polygraphs and psychologicals on 30. And from that distillation, we're down to these 2 fine gentlemen. I think both are here.
Did you,
Never mind.
Mr. Fulton? There you are. Congratulations. All right, any discussion? What was it I heard you said about the physical, Bill?
He looks up, he talked about physical fitness, he looks at this end of the bench.
I get a stiff neck.
That's okay.
Look this
All
way.
right. We understand.
Look, let's be clear, we're not making it.
Even with the practice test?
No, it's not going to happen.
You'll be the rescuees.
That's right. We'll be the good dummies.
The women drag along the ground. Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-147.
Municipal order authorizing the upgrade of public safety software from En route emergency systems in the amount not to exceed $350,000.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Waltrip and second by Nash. Mr. Febo.
Yes, we're here tonight to ask your approval to upgrade the software for our public safety en route emergency system. This is the main software that drives our communication equipment. Like anything IT, we're moving in a new generation of technology. This is moving from what is known as the text-based standard to a graphic database using menu approach. Lynn or Doug are here if you have any questions about this product. It's a sole source product because we already have it.
Any questions, discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-148.
Municipal order authorizing software subscription services from New World Systems in the amount of $91,293 for fiscal year 2013.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Hill and second by Nash. Mr. DeFebo.
One of the good things this commission did about 4.5 years ago was do what is called enterprise software that affects the whole city. We've had that for the last approximately 4 years, and we're here tonight to ask you to approve an annual maintenance contract for $91,293. Lynn Hartley is here if you have any questions. That's roughly a 5%. Some of that represents new capacity that we're adding instead of just an inflationary factor. But Lynn is here if you have any questions about the product. We're pretty happy with it. Most employees are using it. For example, the budget is all New World software, and we're pretty happy with it.
Questions, discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-149.
Municipal order authorizing and accepting bid number 2012-42 for NetApp hardware, software, and services from JBK Network Consulting of Bowling Green, Kentucky, in the amount not to exceed $130,000.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Nash. Mr. DeFebo.
I have a new word for us all. It's called SAN, Storage Area Network. As I mentioned earlier, we produce a lot of data. We have to store that data, and we have to protect it against breakdown and emergency. So we need new storage equipment to do that, and we're here tonight to ask you to buy that from a local vendor. This would also apply not only to Lynn's operation and IT downtown, but also our backup system at Greenwood Firehouse. So it's a good investment, and it's something we need because we produce a lot of data.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-150.
Municipal order authorizing and accepting bid number 2013-01 for Cisco wireless mesh hardware from JBK Network Consulting of Bowling Green, Kentucky, in the amount of $60,569.80.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip, second by Nash. Mr. DeFebo.
We have a public safety outdoor wireless system throughout the city to primarily serve police and firemen. That is dependent on what is known as access points. Those are outdoor transmitters, so to speak. They break down. We have to fix those every year. We're here to hopefully award another bid to JBK to replace some of the broken outdoor wireless points. We had 8 bidders, and JBK was the lowest and best of that group.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-151.
Municipal order authorizing the continuation of contracts for bid number 2012-03 with LKJ Crab Incorporated and True Green Chemlawn of Bowling Green, Kentucky for Transpark maintenance in the total amount of $26,186.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Nash. Mr. DeFebo.
One of the things that the city does in partnership with the chamber and the county is support the Transpark. We help out. I gave you a report on all the things we invested over the years, but one of the smaller things we do is maintain the existing right-of-ways into the Transpark, and we have a bid to do that, and that's for grass cutting, mulching, etc. And this is an extension of a previously bid item. Jay Daugherty is here if you have any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for coming. Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-152.
Municipal order authorizing a contract for the purchase of a wood chipper and winch attachment from Vermeer of Kentucky for Parks and Recreation Landscape Division in the total amount of $39,408.88.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill and second by Waltrip. Mr. DeFebo.
We've had so many storms this year and down trees, it's hard to keep track. But I think about 3 weeks ago, we had a storm which created a lot of downed trees on city property. We realized the ever-present need to have the right equipment to winch up and to wood chip large amounts of fallen trees and limbs. We've traditionally depended upon the public works. We've reached a point of saturation that our own Parks and Rec Landscape Division needs its own industrial strength chipper and winch. We piggybacked onto an existing state contract through a sister city in Corbin, Kentucky. This is a product we need, and we feel it's a sole source, and Jay Daugherty is here if you have any questions.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-153.
Municipal order authorizing the acceptance of a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance for the 2012 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant funds in the amount of $34,423.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nash and second by Hill. Mr. Fedler.
As we learned last year, Officer Edward Byrne was a New York City police officer who was killed in line of duty. The Office of Justice Program created this program to help local police forces attain the type of equipment they normally couldn't get through their budgets. And so we partnered with the county to receive $34,423. Our part is approximately half of that, and we're going to use it for the ongoing need of in-car cameras. Doug is here if you need a longer answer.
No, thank you. Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-154.
Municipal order authorizing a contribution from the city's general fund in the amount of $400,000 to the Bowling Green Police and Firefighters Retirement Fund for fiscal year 2013.
So moved.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Denning. Mr. Febo.
Yes, thank you. This is yours, Mayor, I believe, right? The firefighters?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you're the sponsor, but am I right?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We, as part of the Police Firefighters Retirement Fund, the board consists of Jeff Meisel on behalf of the city, whoever's holding the position of mayor, so it'd be me, and we've got Mr. Harris and Mr. Cheney, who's not here tonight, but we've got our alternates, Gene Whalen and Mac Sears. I'm sorry, Mac. I graduated from the Mac Sears School of Snatch and Grab, is what I tell people when I was at the police department. So, and we considered all of the information presented to us, both by Mr. Meisel and Mr. Kirby, regarding the investments held by the retirement fund. It was originally intended to be a self-supporting fund. There's no longer any current employees retiring. This fund closed in 1988 when the city elected to then participate in the state-administered county employees retirement system. At that time, it was funded quite well, although the state retirement system took a considerable amount of money with them in order to take the current employees at that time with them. That left several, I think is it 44 left? 43? 43 retirees and beneficiaries left. And over the years, we have continued to contribute to that fund because of the investment.
Bless you.
I'm sorry?
I said, excuse me.
I know you did. That's why I was stopping. I thought you. Oh, I'm sorry.
You missed the
We're
first
such a
part.
polite board.
You missed the first part.
I missed the first part, yeah. When we meet quarterly to review the contributions, to review the expenses. Right now, there's approximately I probably should let Jeff talk about the monetary part of it, if you don't mind, Mr. Meisel.
Currently, we are right between roughly $950,000 to $1 million a year in our benefit payments we're paying out. Investments, as you know, the market's been tough the last couple of years, but we had a 4.2% return for 2011. So the fund is, the actuarial report is based on a 6% return. So we weren't quite there for 2011. But so it's about a $7 million fund. We pay out roughly $950,000 to $1 million a year. So it's a challenge maintaining that principal of $7 million with earnings from investments and the city contribution.
And the city is continuing its contribution. It is not discontinuing that at all to the fund. We do want to take care of our retirees. The issue this year that came to a split vote was providing a cost of living increase. The decision again was, it's not a no decision, it was no advanced, it wasn't a help me out, Gene, what's the right term? It was not an affirmative decision that came from the committee. So there's no recommendation for a cost of living increase this year. And I know that the board members there are here tonight, and if they had, I presume they came to speak, so I'd invite you to come up at this time if you like. And please give us your name so we can get that on the minutes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm Tom Harris. The last time I addressed the city leaders was in 1963. I was being hired in as a city firefighter. The reason I'm here tonight, I'm one of the elected representatives on the Police and Fire Pension Board. The mayor mentioned that system closed in 1988. There are now 22 retirees and 21 widows for a total of 43 people that are dependent upon that pension check for their livelihood. They also count upon the city to protect the integrity and buying power of their check. And that's why I'm here tonight, is to ask you if you could somehow find a way to grant a cost of living increase. When I've been on the board 4 years, and there were 31 retirees at that time. There are now 22. That's a 29% reduction in our ranks, so we're not going to be around forever. The average age in the system right now is 75. But I guess, to make a long story short, I feel like those people meant something to the city at one time, and I'm here, I feel like I owe them to come and ask you folks to consider a cost of living raise for them tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mac, did you or Gene have anything to say? I think I had informed each of you that the vote was 2-2. The two retirees requested the cost of living increase, and the city representatives, me and Mr. Meisel, voted not to. Again, that was based upon the comments from Mr. Kirby that we have not been able, from an investment standpoint, to maintain sufficient funds in the retirement fund in order to provide a cost of living which is then compounded each year. The fund itself, we want to make sure, in order to protect our retirees, must remain solvent. And we started out, was it 10 years ago? It was at 110% funded, and it is now down to just a little over 81% funded. And although government retirement funds are not governed by the same accounting rules that you find in private pension funds, 80% funding is generally considered the at-risk category when you reach that level. And my decision was based taking into the fact that the investments did not provide a sufficient return to meet our 6% goal to meet the actuarial standards in order to maintain the fund for the life of the retirees. Number two, those who are in the now state-administered county employees retirement system did not receive a cost of living increase, and that's already decided not only for this year but for next year. And then finally, the percentage of funding. I want to remain, I felt an obligation from a fiduciary responsibility to remain in not in an at-risk category, but to remain in the appropriate level of funding, and that was the basis for my decision. Any discussion or questions? Yes, sir.
What did we give Mr. DeFebo, Jeff, the city employees?
2.97.
2.96.
6.
And that was the proposed increase with the police and fire fund.
That was what now?
That was the proposed cost of living adjustment that was proposed at the board
That
meeting.
was the motion that failed for
That was
for
two, it was a
2.96.
2-2 vote.
Explain to me, if you would, $800,000 that is in police and firemen's retirement account now. Explain that part to me.
We annually pay out in benefits roughly, it's somewhere between $950,000 and $1 million annually now to the 43 participants. There's roughly $7 million in assets right now. The actuarial report showed a projected unfunded liability, which means if everything holds true, even if we were to get 6% return on investments and the projected mortality rates held constant, held true, we would fall $1.6 million short unless we catch up. That's what the report stated. We were making good progress on that up until last year, and then last year from 2010 to 2011, we slid back again. We lost about $200,000. The liability went back up about $200,000.
We didn't lose 200,000.
We didn't lose 200,000, but our liability grew.
Our exposure.
Exposure.
Based on what?
Based on based on the assumption that if our investments return 6% a year, based on if everyone lives their expected life, and there's maybe one other assumption, but there's a couple of assumptions that they make, and then they project what our future liability would be if everything held out, and it's not projected to finish until 2046, I think was in that report. I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me. So
Okay.
basically, Joe, let me repeat. We've got basically $7 million in assets, and we've got roughly almost $9 million in liability.
And that depends on future increases, cost
Yes.
of living increases.
That's assuming we continue to give cost of living adjustments. And I'm not against any. I'm not saying I've voted against all future cost of living adjustments. I've just voted against this one for this coming year.
And we have $2 million worth of liabilities.
Unfunded.
We'll have.
Unfunded.
Unfunded.
And this $400,000, Jeff, and the mayor can correct me, this $400,000 payment, that's basically the city's annual catch-up payment. But that catch-up payment was kind of conditioned on a 6% rate of return that didn't happen.
And here's another way of looking at it. Basically, we've got to cover, let's say, $1 million, whether in benefits or cost of an audit, cost of the actual report. It's roughly $1 million, say. So between our $400,000 that the city's putting in, we have to make the rest of it up in investment returns. So if we don't make it up in the investment returns, which we didn't in 2011, we eat into the principal. So that's why we have to keep our eye on that principal to make sure we're not burning it off too fast. It's pretty much simple as that. That's what it boils down to. And we I guess I can speak for the mayor, but the 2.96% cost of living adjustment just didn't seem prudent at this time, given the 2011 return, given the fact that the liability increased, got bigger. So we thought probably wasn't a good idea to do for this year.
Just one more. Is there a figure at all that would fit the present situation?
We actually went backwards. Is that correct?
The liability.
To stay on par, we had to make $600,000 in investments with the $400,000 contribution that we're making to try to build it up, and the $600,000 in investments did not appear this time. Am I accurate in that?
And again, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I think in any year, cost of living adjustments, and not to say that I'm not going to do it every year, but any cost of living adjustments to this potentially increase the city's contributions in future years. I mean, it's understood that this $7 million is going to be reduced over time, and I'm not the guys here, but at some point, that number is going to be down to zero, but there will be no beneficiaries left. That's what it's intended to do. But the actuarial studies right now are indicating that with cost of living increases, that there's not sufficient funds in this right now to get to that final payment. That's why the city's making payments now to try to build that cushion back up.
Well, I guess my concern, and Bruce and I have talked about it. I know when I was the mayor, we gave a cost of living increase. I guess my concern is regardless, I think of what we have to put in, I think we have an obligation to take care of those widows and the firefighters that are still there, policemen and firefighters. I don't know that I know all the answers.
May I ask?
Yeah, Bill, I'm sorry.
There's a couple things. If we were to grant the 2.96, and I understand that it would compound just like any raises we give any employees, what's the dollar amount?
For 1 year, you'd say roughly $30,000
$30,000.
for 1 year.
If we were to grant a raise, would that put us below the 80% that Bruce talked about?
Depends on what the investments do.
So we don't know.
Yeah.
We won't know now. I can't argue with. It's difficult to argue with figures, but I also agree with Joe in the fact that we have a responsibility to those retirees and are the participants in this plan. And I too would agree that the responsible thing for us to do is to fund this at the level where they could receive the cost of living. And I know that in some circles, if you read a lot about government retirements, and people talk somewhat negatively about them at times, but the fact of the matter is that we made a commitment, obviously, when we left this system, and the new employees in 1988 went to the new state system. And I think if we're talking about that amount of money, that we should fund a cost of living increase. And I don't know what Melinda and Slim think about it. But again, to argue with the data, it's difficult. But if I have to decide right now, and it's not going to, and we're not sure how it's going to play out, I still would rather side on the side of helping people. It's 43 people. Again, I think we have a responsibility as a city to do that. And I think back in times when I came on the PD here in 1977, what tremendous work people that came before that time had done for this city. And it's just difficult for me not to at least grant a cost of living increase when it's not going to, at this time, if I understand the probability, it will not put us in jeopardy. And this is difficult, and I certainly don't fault Jeff or Bruce at all. This is one of those decisions that's, maybe it's right both ways, maybe it's wrong both ways, I don't know, but if I'm going to err, I'm going to err on the side of helping people, I guess. So that would be my comments.
Yes, ma'am.
If we do this, is there anything we can do as a city to protect this fund from further downfall if we grant it? I mean, I agree, everyone wants a cost of living increase, but it worries me if we do that, even though it's only 30-something thousand, long term, is there anything we can do to offset that?
Well, just to back up a step, I think, did you all get my email that had some attachments in it? There was one schedule in there that showed from 2012 until when this fund was expected to wrap up. From 2012 to then, a 0% COLA, assuming no other future COLAs, which is probably very unreasonable. And then there was a 3% COLA column. If you added up all those projected benefit numbers year by year by year, you saw at the bottom there was about a $5.2 million difference from a no COLA to a 3% COLA every year. So that's the effect of the compounding. So going back to your question, is there anything we can do to protect it? I think I'm more than committed to continue with the contributions. We build them into the budget every year. We get that actual report every spring. Katie and I look at it, and we try to stay right on that 15-year amortization schedule where we don't get too far behind, but then we don't want to overdo it either. So I think if we can continue to make our contribution that they tell us we need to make and stay on that 15-year plan, and if the markets pick back up and interest rates get back to where they used to be, I think we can be back to where we need to be again.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I don't know how this is going to sound, but if the average age is 75, I'd rather do what we can now for people instead of wait.
Yeah.
And the $400,000 we put in the budget process is were we told that we needed to put in $400,000? I know it's been in the information you sent us. It's been differing amounts each year.
Yeah, it changes every year based on what the investments do and all that. But I try to stay. It's in a range. We try to stay in that range. It's not an exact number. It's not a perfect science, as you know. So
could we not? And this may be going obviously beyond this, but could we not in the budget process look at the issue and take this in consideration when we're preparing the budget to know how much we need to do if we want to give a certain amount, instead of having this come like this? And again, I'm not being...
It's always going to change depending on what the cost of living and the investment is. We're serving two financial masters. One is making sure the fund is solvent for the last person on the fund. Right. So either pay now or pay later. The other is providing economic equity now, a cost of living to keep their wages whole. Yeah. So if you make the $30,000 payment, you've negated your ability to serve the other master. It's a policy decision. The best thing we can do is continue to chip off the deficit. We've been doing that 6 years, 7 years, forever, trying to add more money when we can.
And I can see this decision, though. I can see it's in the same boat next year, saying that the fund is only 82%, and then there's with it that low, there probably always is a good reason not to provide.
It's going to take more money every year. That's the reality of this dismal science of actuarials.
And the other challenge is it's a closed plan. There's no employees. Right. It's not an active plan. So the city is basically the only contributor, and then we rely on the investments to do what they need to do. So it's.
I still go back. I think that we have a responsibility to do all we can, and I'm still not seeing anything that would make me not want to provide a cost of living increase.
And I guess I would like to have some guidance going forward. Yeah. I think the city always ties its COLA to the CPI. The mayor mentioned the state retirement system. Would we want to look at a gauge related to the state retirement system going forward where, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Since it is a closed plan, the state's retirees, that's basically, in a way, a closed plan, but active employees are paying into it. But I guess we would like some guidance on where we go in the future.
What does Social Security do?
I don't know to answer that one.
I don't think they got a raise
How much
this
they
year.
did, how much they got one this year?
Huh?
I'm not positive they got one this year.
Well, isn't that what, I think that's what I mean when we get in the budget process, that we discuss this just like we do other line items. And then, I mean, we give, as a body, we give staff direction or focus through the budget process. Maybe the same discussions again, if it's held during that time, then we don't have an issue like this that's outside the budget process where we've already decided 400,000. You know, maybe it needs to
But
be
the only difference,
405,000.
they're a separate board, and you had a tie vote here.
Right.
It easily could have been the other way. And
I
which-
want to help these gentlemen out, but then I have to watch the city side too. So, and I guess the mayor and I are in the same boat. We're right in the middle, so.
The comment was made that we want to take care of the retirees. You know, the opinion is how do you take care of the retirees, make the fund solvent so it's there till the end of their.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm not being convinced it won't be. And I think that future commissions will make sure that it's solvent. And again, I just hate to see us not do something with this. And argue the points that you all made. I could argue that point too, but obviously I don't have the luxury of being in the middle, and that's just my opinion. I believe we should do something.
And not to speed this discussion up, but the state statutes do give the city commission the ability and the authority to determine the cost of living beyond the recommendations from the board if you want to do that. But at the same time, that's kind of independent of what we're voting on tonight.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
if you're stuck on tonight, you can always still go ahead and do this and then put something back on the agenda if somebody wants to do that. Because those are, to me, these are independent issues.
This was just a good time to bring it up.
It was. It was a good time to talk about it. But it's not something you have to worry about. Unless you want to, you can amend this if you want to do it too. But otherwise, you can go ahead and vote on this tonight, and then somebody can give us something for the next agenda if that's what you want to do.
Well, I'm like Bill. I am interested, as long as I'm seated up here, to make sure that that last person that's in that group is taken care of to the best of our ability, and in giving them what they entitled to as retirees or widows of retirees. I just can't get over the fact that that's our obligation until the last one, whenever that is.
Yes, sir.
According to the Social Security Administration website, there was not a COLA in 2010 or 2011, but there is one in 2012 at a 3.6% cost of living adjustment.
I appreciate that.
Something about Jeff's email struck me when I read it, and I guess any one of the three, although there are 4 retirees sitting there, 3 retirees could speak to, and that is that this plan was never originally set up to afford annual COLAs. Is that accurate from your opinion? So everybody can hear you. Will you go to the microphone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're correct, sir, and there's no legal mandate or anything on that. But at the same time, the buying power of the check, is evaporating, and so that's where we are.
If you were faced, and you can only speak for yourself, and I understand that, if you were faced with the plan crumbling, being non-existent or having this increase, what would you choose between the two? And I know we're not at that precipice right now.
Yes, sir. You're correct. The plan has to be protected. All I'm saying is that the only protection we have from inflation is from the city contributions, and the city. We're grateful for what we have, But the city's contribution this year was $50,000 less than last year. And I see that, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I see that as why we unable to do the cost of living.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Someone mentioned, I'm not sure who, said other agency did not receive a COLA increase. What are some of those other retirement funds? I don't
County
remember who
employees,
said.
Kentucky employees,
I'm sorry,
state police.
can't we start over? I'm sorry.
County Employees Retirement System, Kentucky Employees Retirement System, State Police Retirement System,
Teachers are the only ones
and
that
what's the
receive
other
one, I
one?
guess.
KERS, Kentucky Employees Retirement System.
I believe I'm right in that the teachers may be the only one who received a 1.5. I'm not positive, but I think that.
You know, back to kind of what Kevin said, it's pay now or pay later. We could stop contributing and just let this thing fizzle out. We got $7 million. That'd be approximately 7 years if you didn't make any return on your investment. There's some cities that they have zero assets and they're paying as you go.
And
We may be one of the few cities that actually have assets left that we're maintaining. So,
and I know we could do that,
but I'm just
but-
throwing
but-
that out. That's an option. So,
but it sounds kind of corny, but not on my watch. I mean,
Yeah.
there is the decision. The decision is not whether to take care of the retirees. The question is, at what level do we take care of the retirees? I think to talk about not having the system at all or letting it, just live out its course with the money it has in it, it really sends the wrong message. I don't think there's anybody up here
that's the
in
other.
support of
That's
doing
just
it.
the
I
other
understand.
extreme. I'm just
Understand.
explaining
Understand.
how that works.
And I'm not saying, I don't think he ever said let it die. Basically, he's saying, once that money's gone every year, the city will appropriate enough money. If it's $800,000 or $900,000, I guess.
I
the
see what
city-
you're saying.
It's
Okay.
our responsibility.
I misunderstood
we would
what you
cover
were
it.
saying.
We would cover it. It would be, roughly $1 million a year. We would cover it.
I understand what you're saying now. I did not understand that
Yeah.
earlier.
And there is a fine line. I still go back, and I don't want it to appear like I don't want the fund to be sound, but what I'm hearing is that it's slipping, but it's still sound. Could we do the 400,000 and still provide a raise? Would it how much more over the 400,000 that we have budgeted now? We'll do that.
I think
We have and I apologize, but we have underspending every year at the end of the budget, and of course, people could criticize this next statement, but again, it's what do we want to do with our money? I think we should take care of the retirees. But again, I don't fault anyone for believing the other way either.
we can do a cost of living. There's no guarantee as to what it does to that unfunded liability. That's all. Could go up drastically. Could not. If the investments have a good year, might hold steady. Who knows?
And I guess
It's
if I had
hard.
the chief financial officer say much different, then I'd probably wonder about you. Because I think that on that end, I'm sure that you and Bruce both have sound advice, and you do want to take care of retirees as well. I think we're just differing on how that should happen.
I do.
But what's on the floor is not a cost of living. It is funding the retirement fund, adding $400,000 from city funds to keep
Right.
this fund at a level.
Right.
That's correct. I guess we could entertain a motion if you wanted to make it tonight, but I think what Gene's recommending is that you submit municipal order for next time, or if there's going to be one submitted.
Yeah. I agree.
And
So-
I'm not advocating that.
Or they can-
Those are two options.
Yeah,
They can add it tonight.
so right now, we just need to vote on what we are going to
Fine.
participate, or what we're going to give the retirement fund, and are we going to set a time frame next meeting, whatever, as to whoever is going to come back with an order?
somebody just needs to notify us and tell us what you want to do, and we'll draft a municipal order for you.
It simply takes one of you to sponsor an item for the next agenda, so you just need to let the clerk's office know.
I think that'd be the most prudent thing. We can go ahead and get this passed, get that done, and then there'll be a municipal order for the next meeting.
Do we have a motion on this already?
Can I,
Yes, sir.
if I may? If we drop below 85%, Jeff, what happens?
80%.
80%?
Nothing really. I mean,
You're not penalized or anything.
no.
You become identified as an at-risk that shows up then on your balance sheet, which could affect your bonding rating. And
Could affect your what?
And I will make note that there is a new GASB statement, GASB being Government Accounting Standards Board, passed in June, where the city is going to, here in I think 2 or 3 years, it's going to be a requirement. We report the liability. We don't report it now on our balance sheet, but we will have to report that $9 million pension liability against that $7 million, as it is today, assets on the balance sheet, which will show negative net assets. The other thing, too, we're going to have to do is the state's going to send us our portion of the CERS liability, which you all may have seen it in the KLC newsletter, projected at $67 million. We're going to have to put that on the face of our balance sheet on the city's financial statements. So that's a standard that's coming out, which I don't know, it's been there all along. It's just going to be front page now, but that will reflect on this fund's statements here in, I think, 2 more years where it'll be front and center. So it's been there all along, but they're going to make us show it from now on. It's not going to be hidden, buried in the notes, the financial statements.
And that'll be true on any unfunded liability we have, though.
Yes, yes. And as you know, that's probably going to grow. 67 million. I don't know what year they projected, but that's what our projected liability is with CERS, what we would have to pay in.
Which would be the same when we back bonds on other projects.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, just additional side note there.
Any other questions?
No other questions. You want to reserve comments for
No,
the
go
municipal
ahead.
order that comes up?
No, go right ahead.
It's interesting. In another role, I've gone through the same thing sitting where you are, having gone without any kind of increase for more than 3 years now in my job that actually pays the bills. And I always think if I had the ability to make a decision, I would make a decision in favor of the employees. In this case, in favor of the retirees. And I guess my position, my position is what I've done without that increase is I've hustled harder. I've gone out and I've worked harder to try to make additional income in some way to make up for that. And I mean no disrespect by this, but I think that's what young people do. I don't think that we honor those that have gone before us in our society as often as we should. And hustling is to be left for the younger people because there is a reality that as you get older, your ability to hustle is diminished. And your ability for people to give you the opportunity to hustle at whatever speed you do it at is diminished. And if we're not willing to take care of the people who've gone before us, then I'm not sure that we're as progressive of a city as that we promote that we are. New buildings are great. Redevelopment is great. But there's a foundation by which we get to work off of, and it's made by the 3 of you and many others like you. And I would have to study the numbers in a more closely fashion as to what percentage of a COLA seems reasonable for both sides, but I do believe that a cost of living increase I would support.
Anyone else? Okay, so the vote at this point will be on making the $400,000 contribution to the fund for fiscal year 2013. Any other questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Thank you for coming, fellas. Appreciate it. Municipal Order 2012-155.
Municipal order approving second amended lease agreement with Crawdaddy Enterprises Incorporated, doing business as 440 Main, for lease of a portion of the public sidewalk located in front of 440 East Main, 442, 444 East Main, and 436 East Main.
What did you say, Bill? I didn't hear you.
Where's Bruce?
Oh, I'm
No, I
sorry.
said something.
So moved.
Motion by Nash.
Second.
Excuse me?
Second.
Motion by Nash and second by Denning. Mr. DeFebo.
Mayor, items 19 and 20 are in the same family. With your courtesy, maybe we can entertain both of them, even though we'll take two separate motions. As a commission and the public might know, we control the sidewalk space in front of businesses, especially around the square, and we let various businesses lease that to foment commerce and activities. Tonight we have two that are an expansion of existing sidewalk leases, one for i.e. 440 Main and the second for the Bowling Green Pipe and Cigar. Gene is the architect of these leases and might be appropriate if you have any questions to address those to him.
Any questions? You want me to do it?
Pardon me?
You want me to do it?
No, I don't mind to do it. I'd like to ask a question is why I move forward on this, and that is there a way to alter this from a year lease? Do we have the discretion to, say, alter it to a 3-month period or a 4-month period to do it?
It's our agreement. We can put in it whatever we want to do. There's already, I'd have to go back and look, I think there's already fairly lenient cancellation language that we put in that basically gives us the ability to cancel it. You know, if I think for 30 days, no, I need to go back and look at it real quick. But I think we've got fairly good cancellation language now. And make sure everybody understands, and I think you do, what this one is. This one's amending, the first one is amending 440s just to expand theirs in front of Golden Farley. Standing room only. They're not talking about tables and chairs, but they're talking about just expanding from 5 until 11 or midnight, where it is during in the evening when Golden Farley's not open. So that's what this one, the first one's about. Just they've already once before. We've already leased to them in front of their sidewalk, in front of their business. We've also leased to them in front of the next adjacent business. Now I think they're going the opposite direction. At least they're asking the city to do that.
And if it's standing room only, I guess what they're really asking for, to just be blunt, is an extension of their liquor license, correct? It will allow their patrons to stand in front of another business on the sidewalk and hear the band that plays out front.
That's the only reason we do these leases. If other people just want to do sidewalk sales and stuff, we don't bring those here. They just go through Bobby Joe or somebody and get permission to get on the sidewalk. The reason we do these leases is the fact that these are sidewalk cafes. They want to be able to serve alcohol outside. So we expand their ABC licensed premise by leasing them part of the sidewalk. And of course, people who are drinking have to stay within the leased premise. At least we hope they do, and that kind of thing. But you're right. That's the only reason we're here. Because that's the only reason we need to do this. Is the fact they need to add to their ABC licensed premise in order to have people consume alcohol within that area.
So they are going to be going towards Mrs. Stewart's business now?
The other direction.
They already
The other
do.
direction. I think they're already in front of her business now.
Other direction towards a pipe shop?
Yep, towards the pipe shop in front of Golden
Going
Farm.
in front of Golden Farley, yes.
We know this is problematic based on the email, but it was a tough call, and we thought we should separate the issues, and this might help create more revenue stream that might help us. That was how we looked at it, especially on the first.
I suppose my proposal would be to alter this from a 12-month lease to a 3-month lease, renewable for 3 months at a time until we have compliance. And if there isn't compliance, then we would end that agreement. But I would very much like to see somebody be given an opportunity to get in compliance before they're told no.
Okay.
Is that in the form of a motion?
That's in the form of a motion, Katie.
So I have an amendment to make it a 3-month lease, and the motion is by Nash,
Second.
second by Hill. And so we'll have a discussion on the motion to amend. Any other comments? Hearing none, please call the roll on the motion to amend the lease to a 3-month at a time operation.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denny?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes.
Okay, now before, if I could speak just a minute before you vote on the other one. Not saying we have to do this, but between meetings, I passed this out. I think a week or so ago, we did receive an email from a police officer expressing some concern, not a whole lot of things, but some concern about managing the lease areas. Probably going to be maybe a bigger issue now if we're going to have actually 2 leased premises now abutting each other. I mean, I think, unless I'm misreading this, I think that's what's going to happen if we approve the next one as well. We may actually have 2 abutting each other. This issue came up probably a year or 2 ago, and we talked about it internally. And not saying we have to do this, but you know, this looks nice. it really does look nice, and I know it also adds a cost and expense to people. But it also, the officers' concerns were being able to delineate where the lease premise ends. I think there may be just marks on the sidewalks, but if it's night, if it's lots of people, you can't figure out where it is. And I know I've made a comment a couple times before. You know, when I drive down, when I'm down that area, if I drive down State Street, I look left, and I have concerns sometimes whether somebody with disabilities can get down the sidewalk with the tables and chairs and the people and everything else. You know, where they can, we haven't had any complaints. I don't want to, create a problem where there is none, but also have concerns at some point we are going to have a complaint from somebody who's disabled that they were unable to get down Main Avenue some night because of the tables and chairs and everything else. We just showed you this. I think Bobby Joe had this. She provided it to me. I think it came from Tupelo, Mississippi, that showed what they had done to, putting attractive, clear delineation of where the lease premise was. And again, I'm not saying we have to do this, but I want to bring to your attention at least the concerns from the police officer about their, at least their concerns about being able to show, everybody knows where one ends and the other one starts, and particularly with more people now maybe are outside, it's night, it's hot, and people are outside, and his concern was got all these people mingling, and he has no idea at 10 o'clock at night whether they're inside the lease premises or not.
Is that I can't tell online, is that a permanent structure? Is that like a velvet rope or expandable or foldable? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I can't tell you either.
Plus, the sidewalk is a lot larger than our sidewalk.
Yeah, it's a big sidewalk.
Yeah.
But ours is pretty good size.
Well, a person in a wheelchair is not going to make it down on that side.
But I just want to bring this to your attention tonight, not say we need direction or anything, but just we want to make sure you're aware of the police officer's concerns we got.
Well, I would think that we could mark it off from one end to the other, some type of a marker. I don't think that is a problem.
Well, I think there are marks on the sidewalk now, but there actually, I think, apparently something's actually on the sidewalk or in the sidewalk or something. The officer's concern was that at 10 o'clock at night, if it's dark, with 30, 40 people outside, he can't see those. They're covered up. Pins or where they are.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll be voting on the amended motion. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Is there not significant risk to the establishment if the people that are consuming the alcohol are not outside of the designated area?
there could be, I'm not sure it's significant, there could be potential citations, I guess, to both patrons and to the business owner if people are consuming alcohol outside the leased premises.
So my question is, we're talking about two different businesses here. Their sidewalk rental is now going to abut one another.
Yes.
But don't they have two different types of liquor licenses?
Well,
Outside, you mean?
Both of them have a beer license, which is the same, whether it's a
Right.
Minute Mart or a eating
But let's
establishment,
say
but the other one does have a
somebody
liquor
came
license.
from restaurant A and went into location B with hard liquor,
That would be a
and
violation.
B does not sell hard liquor. And there's not a question there about whether or not anything's been violated.
The licensee should not be allowing mixed drinks to leave their licensed premise.
What about beer?
Well, that potentially the police could cite the person who has the liquor in their hand for drinking in public, because now they're outside the leased premises. My understanding is they could also cite the licensee for allowing mixed drink to leave the licensed premise. Although I would tell you, ABC statutes, talking about statutes, there are 4 chapters. I wish they combine them in one chapter. Sometimes we get conflicting, I guess, not decisions, but discussions with the state. They always treat beers separate and different than mixed drinks. So whether somebody could carry a beer out and be cited, I think they can, but we always get conflicting. Beer is treated differently than mixed drink. I think clearly, though, if somebody's got a mixed drink in their hand and they start walking down Main Street outside that licensed premise, then if a police officer is there to see it, they have a potential problem. The licensee has a potential problem. Does that help you?
Yeah.
Read the 4 chapters sometime.
Thanks, that helped a lot.
Let me draw a picture here.
I guess it's incumbent upon the individual and the licensee to manage this.
Yes.
If they're asking for the courtesy of using taxpayer property to further their business, then some responsibility has to fall back on the licensee to manage that.
And to comply with the agreement.
Right.
In all fairness to 440, I have seen individuals that has tried to walk out from the boundaries, and the owners let them know that they can't do that. I've seen people try to walk from the premises over on the sidewalk over to our park, to drink a beer, and they've been told they can't do that. Everybody, not everyone, but a good many people think because we have that available to the citizens that want to have a beer or so downtown, they think they're in New Orleans, where they can just take off and go any direction they want to go in with a beer in their hand, and they can't.
All right. Anything else? All right, our vote will be on the amended municipal order, which will lease the premises, but on a 3-month period now. Is that correct? All right, please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-156.
Hold on. Municipal order approving amended lease agreement with Colbin Holdings, LLC, doing business as Bowling Green Pipe and Cigar for lease of a portion of the public sidewalk located in front of 430, 432, and 434 East Main.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion by Waltrip, second by Denning. Both of them have been discussed in the area. Mr. Denning, go ahead.
Mayor, let me make sure I'm clear. Does the same apply for this establishment as the prior vote for the other establishment?
No, sir.
3-month lease?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2012-157.
Municipal order waiving fees and costs reimbursement related to the use of city property and city personnel by American Idol for program auditions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Hill, second by Waltrip.
Purportedly, the American Idol will appear in Bowling Green in the coming period of time. Assuming that happens at some location in the city, we thought it was important to show courtesy to people who are bringing this program to our city. I think we benefit from it, so it's our staff recommendation that we waive pursuant to the policy you have, cost and fees, which can involve police, cleanup, traffic control, et cetera, for that night.
Any discussion? No, you can't sing, Slim.
We need to put that in the ordinance.
Yes. Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes.
A dance contest ever come to Bowling Green? I'm in.
I'm leaving.
Are you in?
I'm in.
Next thing we need to do is to bring ordinance 2012-27 off the table for consideration. So motion by Hill, second by Nash. Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Hill?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. And now for consideration of ordinance 2012-27.
Ordinance amending zoning ordinance. Ordinance amending Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8, and appendices of the zoning ordinance for the City of Bowling Green, Kentucky, as recommended by the City County Planning Commission.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Second by Denning. Motion by Waltrip, second by Denning. Mr. Febo, do you have anything to add here?
There's
sir?
a couple actions, I think. Gene and I talked today about how we should approach this, and I think there is a series of actions and amendments that Gene should best explain because they have legal nuance. Gene?
I think there's been 2 or 3 recommended changes, maybe one more than 2 or 3 recommended changes, but 2 or 3 entities, I guess, have recommended changes to these amendments recommended by the Planning Commission. I think we talked last time, a couple weeks ago, Warren County made some probably relatively minor changes in the ordinance once it got to them. I think in your book, past the green tab, I think we had some proposed changes. These are proposed changes from Warren County. Mayor Wilkerson sent us some proposed changes that he wanted, and so we amended those. And then the last one we'll talk to you here just briefly. It's a staff one, and I'll talk more when I get to that one. But if you look on the tab that we gave you, like on page 3, section 1.13, fire protection requirements, the stuff in red, the information in red, that's what Warren County has recommended be changed. I don't think these impact the city at all. These issues were all out in the county. Concerning gallons per minute, other fire protection requirements. So once these got to fiscal court, they had some questions about this. So my understanding is when they passed their ordinance with these changes. So to be consistent, we need to make the same changes that they did. The next changes all were recommended by Mayor Wilkerson. The first one I've got, I think, is on page 7, section 2.5, Historic Preservation Board. Starting down at the bottom, 2.5.2, powers and duties of the Preservation Board. Those recommended changes are in red. The first one, in number 1, said the duties of the board was to conduct the survey of historic buildings. Conducting was taken out, for example, and the words review, staff, initiate surveys was inserted in its place. If you go to page 8, the next changes by the mayor, he wanted to remove section 6, 7, and 8. Dealing with the duties and responsibilities of the Historic Preservation Board. And again, working with and advising federal, state, and county governments, advising, assisting property owners, initiating plans for the preservation and rehabilitation of individual historic buildings. Now, obviously, I'll defer to Mayor Wilkerson, his justifications why his changes. I'm just, at this point, just marking and delineating what his changes were. The next one goes back to section 3.13, again, local historic designation on page 22. Starts at the bottom of page 21, historic overlay standards, paragraph, it's now the new paragraph A, because the first change was done by the Planning Commission. but talks about historic overlay standards shall include the Secretary of the Interior standards. At the end of that, and it says, and may include other local standards. I think before it said almost like mandatory to include, and mandatory aspects are being changed to this to say that these reviews may include local standards as well. If you'll go on back, I think its next changes, and that change was made in a couple places. I'm not sure if I picked up the first one, but that change was made twice. If you go back to pages 20 or 62 and 69, or we'll start with 62, dealing with zoning, Article 4, zoning districts, the downtown commercial local historic district. There were some prohibited activities listed. For example, adult entertainment, group living, eating establishments, and drive-throughs. Those were all okay, but the mayor requested that the original numbers 4, 5, and 6 of the prohibitions be deleted. Motels, extended stay facilities, commercial parking, and retail with drive-through or pickup windows. So those are marked out, and that's down at the bottom. The second one in E, you'll see the second may include instead of shall include local guidelines too. And then on page 69, although I'm not sure I have the first page, but I think this also still deals with the downtown commercial local historic district. To kind of back up to what we said about commercial parking, there's also language dealing with the downtown commercial local historic district that dealt with driveways and parking areas that use surface parking lots are not permitted. That section's now been deleted as well to be in compliance with the ones on page 62. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mayor, that was all your proposed changes, unless I missed something. The last one is on page 89. It was the new section 5.3.3, other temporary uses. Brent Childers and I have talked about this. There may have been maybe a miscommunication or failure to communicate. I think the Planning Commission thought that Brent had been advised about this change before it came out, and he was not. This one, we're not saying this is bad. I think I'll let Brent speak too. We just don't know what it is. We're not real sure we understand the complete intent of this or what it's going to be applicable to. So if we maybe get some information, and I'll let Brent speak too. We're not saying this is bad. We're just unclear as to what the intent is and what's going to be applicable to. And due to that, we're not real keen about recommending its approval if we don't know what, because we enforce the zoning ordinance. The city does. So we want to make darn sure we know what we're enforcing. And if for example, if you read the very first things, the following temporary uses that involve no permanent structures shall require a temporary use permit from the respective local legislative body. I don't think you all want to be issuing all these. We could probably disregard that language and do it internally, but the language says basically that you all approve these temporary permits.
I see the word fireworks in there. I'm already out on that one.
Well, but fireworks, I'm not sure how applicable, because we already say that fireworks have to be sold in properly zoned areas. That's part of our permitting process. So they can't go anyplace else.
How about church picnics? We have to regulate private property activities.
Yeah.
Is that a lift that we want to do?
We'll let Steve talk about it. Like I said, we're not real sure we're opposed to it. We just don't understand it.
I agree with Gene. He doesn't understand it.
Well, it's not the first thing I don't understand. So
it's pretty simple.
Maybe.
This started with Warren County and our county attorney approaching me about, we've had 2 or 3 years in a row, fairly big festivals and concerts out in the county. And we need to come up with some type of mechanism to address temporary uses that don't stay a long time in the county, but we also didn't think it was fair to force someone to go find zone property. We have a fairly big concert that's going to end up here in the fall again. We're hearing the Starry Nights Festival is going to be out in Warren County. Cage Elephant's going to play. I've already been contacted. I'm hearing 8,000 to 10,000 people. You all know they played on the South Lawn. We had 7,000 there. It's going to be in the county. I've already been told. This permit was designed, I contacted Amy, and we talked about would this work. It's pretty simple, Gene. When you read section A, it says festivals, sporting events, carnivals, circus, or other similar uses that are less than 7 days, no permanent structures, you get the temporary use permit. Everything else that involves retail and B, you still got to be zoned right.
But they have to be, I think keywords, I think what I learned this morning, I think keywords to me may be missing here, because I understand that these type of festivals, less than 7 days, on land not properly zoned for what they're doing.
Do it in the farm somewhere.
Just doesn't say that.
Well, it says temporary use permit here, and then the second one, B, says the sale of seasonal materials. So anything that's retail clearly says has to be located on appropriate zoning classification.
Yeah, 'cause
The
I'm
goal
a-
here is that the festival can go out on a 100-acre farm somewhere, and we don't force the property owner to zone it commercial for 48 hours. The county would issue a temporary use permit. The neat thing about the temporary use permit, it gives us an opportunity to actually attach some conditions to it. The goal was to have the governments do it independently because the Planning Commission, A, doesn't want the fee. We'd be glad to review every single one of them and attach plenty of conditions, but for example, in the Starry Nights, I think we'd want to figure out to make sure the access point is going to be okay, even if it's temporary. Are they going to gravel, or are we going to have a dust problem like we did on Morgantown Road a couple years back? Are we going to use porta pots? Exactly how many tents may we have? Are we going to have temporary stages? It's a good opportunity to sort of package everything under one temporary use permit. I've talked to Mac Yao, the County Public Works Director, and he said he's going to make it pretty simple. They're going to make it a $10 or $15, $20 fee. Just attach a second little item on their building permit, temporary use permit. It's completely a volunteer system. We're hoping the people come to us and say, hey, I'm getting ready to have a carnival or festival out on the farm. I need this permit. In this case with Starry Nights, all the attorneys and the companies are wanting to make sure all the proper permits are sought before the event happens. And it'll give us an attempt, what about signage? How late is the band going to play? Are they going to play 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m.? I think this is an opportunity that we can control the festival for 48 hours and be done with it. We're not trying to overcomplicate this thing. Clearly, if there's a festival, sporting event, carnival, or circus on government property, it's just going to be like they were. But, if the Duncan Hines Festival decided to move out on the Bale Farm on Campbell Lane, said we'd rather be there, I don't want to force them to have to go find a commercial parking lot if we can make do with a field somewhere. Cheney's is another good example. If they wanted to have a big event and use the lot next door, I don't want to have to make them zone that commercial to go ahead and have overflow parking for their movie thing that they have down there. I think the goal here was to make this simple and deal with these oddball uses that show up in our county. As I told Brent on the phone the other day, this is not going to probably affect the city as much because most of the property is zoned commercial or industrial, especially on Campbell Lane where a little festival may go. But clearly if they're selling product, they still have to be zoned commercial. That's what B says. But this would be for all these oddball things. I'm not sure what kind of sporting event would show up and not end up on public property or be in the park. But if there was some kind of hole-in-one tournament or something that said, I want to go on someone's property, this would be an avenue that we could let them do that and we could still address maybe some neighborhood concerns. Wabaw is a perfect example. They're zoned commercial. They have now concerts out back, some facilities, but at some point you step off the commercial property and we're on multifamily property over there. And I think in this case, this is another good tool where the city then could help regulate that situation. Either stay on your commercial property, or if you want to be on the multifamily property, get the temporary use permit and tell us how many hours you're going to be on that property. Pay us $10 or something and let's move on. That was the goal. That's why it was written. A former staff member researched this and found this is in many other planning commission ordinances. And then Amy Milliken saw it and said, I think that'll work for the Starry Nights Festival.
That works great for the county, but it'd been nice if we were consulted about it and given the independent decision to see whether it fits for us. Because in this thing, there's a lot of changes made by a lot of different people and entities, and this affects the city. So that presumption, I think, is detrimental to us passing this tonight.
Kevin, I sent this to you. I sent this to you in June, and it's August.
No,
There's 171 changes that went to you that again, you all made some comments on in this 2-month window. Same with the city commission. I don't know what else I could have done but to send you the recommendation when I did, and we've spent 2 months looking at it.
You could have discussed it with our staff. Our recommendation is that we put this in abeyance and study it with Steve or without Steve and come back with a recommendation about that. There seems to be a lot of unbundling of things in here, and we thought that we weren't sure whether you wanted to do this, especially since you weren't consulted in terms of whether you wanted it.
I don't know what that means, unbundling or abeyance.
Don't pass it tonight.
Table.
It's tabled. Take it out. Take this part out. Unbundle this part.
And go on with the rest of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Make it Warren County only if
That's
that's what
fine.
you want to do. I mean,
I'm not sure we even it's not a bad idea. We just need to study it because all those things you talked about, what was missing was the word City of Bowling Green. So
I can't think of one issue that's going to come up in your city that's even going to trigger this that I could give you a good example except a concert. Fair, festival, circus, they're probably going to be on public property. We're not going to ask them to get a permit probably. Again, if it's out on private property somewhere in zone commercial, they don't need anything. This would just be the oddball event that might end up on a farm somewhere, and typically those 100-acre tracts, big equestrian event, ATV issue or something. Most of these things happen out in Warren County. So if you guys feel you're not comfortable with it, we'll just leave it a Warren County provision and let the county move forward with how they're going to handle this. Again, we need this in the ordinance September 1 with the rest of the stuff so we can handle the Starry Nights Festival. There was a chance that festival was going to land in the city, and I won't get into specifics where it was going to go, but it was going to go in the farm field and weren't in the city. And so this was drafted at a time when we were thinking we were going to be in the city with this festival, and this would have been the perfect avenue to control that event, deal with hours of operation, access, crowd control, whatever, signage, whatever we want to use.
Which to me would lead back to what Mr. DeFebo said, and somebody from the city should have been at the table. I'm confident that you spent time with Amy Milliken working over the issue. I don't think that anybody's arguing that it's a bad provision to have in there. I think the argument is we haven't thought about all the implications of what the provision is because we weren't consulted with. There was no conversation that occurred, despite the fact that one was occurring with the county. It's a tough job to be in your spot and have to deal with both the city and the county, but that's the job and you got to do it.
And again, these are 171 pages of housekeeping amendments or fixes to make the ordinance perform better for the public. And again, I think what we're trying to keep in mind here is the general citizens out there that we needed to do this thing pretty fast. I wasn't made aware of the festival until, I don't know, April or May. And then we were like, how are we going to handle this out on this farm? Actually, it was going to go on Morgantown Road, then it was going to go in the city, then back in the county. And someone suggested a temporary use permit as our former senior planner, and he did the research and said this would work. And it was simple and written, again, where I thought it was easy to read. And who issues the permit, how much, what you need a form, I understand all those things. But as far as trying to really understand what we're trying to do, it's exactly what's in item A. If the 7 days needs to be 5 or 3 or 48 hours, that may be the type of change you guys want to make. But at this point, I don't know of any of those events coming your way. And so I'm good with whatever you guys need to do. There's a lot of stuff in here that clearly we didn't call every department and say, hey, what about the detailed development plan compliance review letters that are now going to involve the building inspector? What about the billboard permits now that we're going to have to go ahead and count how many per capita heads there is per 1,000 before we issue a permit? Clearly these things are going to impact the city and how you guys issue permits, but we were fixing the zoning ordinance in 171 pages at one time.
And don't misunderstand me. I feel like you're picking a fight. I don't know if you are.
No,
but
I'm
that's
not.
what I feel like.
No, I'm not.
Because
I'm good with whatever
I have
I
to
want.
say, as one of Mr. DeFebo's 5 bosses, the way you spoke to him just a moment ago is unacceptable.
Well, I apologize for that. Yeah.
But allow me to say that I'm not suggesting that you should go detail by detail and notify every department, as you just said, of each one of the provisions that's in here. But if you know there's going to be a problem, if you know there's going to be something significant, you pick up the phone.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, I talked to Brent yesterday when I found I
Well,
didn't
that's
know
great,
you guys
but,
had know.
but you're asking us to vote on it tonight.
I did not know you all were not aware of this provision until Gene brought it up just a few days ago to my attention. I was under the impression you all knew about it.
What you mentioned a while ago, Steve, the September 1st deadline, I think that's of interest.
We're in trouble on that.
Where did we come with that? Is it?
Try to tie in with the comprehensive plan and deal with the sewer issue that's out there looming with the 2,000-foot sewer rule that needs to go into effect to tie in with the comprehensive plan. Unfortunately,
so the comprehensive plan is going in effect September 1st?
September 1st. And
so
again,
you need to have the ordinances that support the comprehensive plan in place by that time.
Yeah. Again, go to Mr. Nash's point, I think the issue that caused the problem was we really needed to fix 3 things. But the staff took 4 months to go through the whole book. And we got pressed in May to send it to the liaison board. It came back and we sent it to the city the 1st of June, somewhere around June. And the cities had it. We didn't hear a single comment until, actually you all raised comments at the last meeting. The city staff never raised a single comment on a single document until you guys asked me questions July 17th. So somewhere between June and July 17th, I was under the impression that there were no changes that needed to be made except what Warren County had raised and what you all had
I
raised.
didn't have it at that time, did you?
No, and again, the only thing I heard were 4 comments you all made at the last meeting, and I went back and went to work on those, and Gene sent me an email and asked about this section. There may be other things in here that you guys do need to look at, Commissioner Nash. You may want to look at, again, that billboard language that I raised last time, because that is going to change the way you're going to have to issue billboard permits. We changed some different, again, on detailed development plans, we now are asking that before COs are issued, that there's a kind of an extra gap in there where the Planning Commission can go out and do site review, and there actually has to be a letter issued from the Planning Commission before the CO can be issued by the building inspector. I don't know if all of that's been caught by the city staff, but all I could do is send you all the recommendation and then answer the questions you guys raised. So I probably went about it the wrong way, but there's so much stuff in here, I'm not exactly sure how I would have disseminated all the information to whoever.
Steve, we'll work it out with you next week. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
I propose we table the whole thing then until it's worked out.
And we have some people here that
Oh,
you want to
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead and... Yeah. Are you talking about this whole thing?
This whole
Okay,
thing.
I got you.
But surely
Can
if there
we
are
come
people who
back?
want to talk, I want
Commissioner
to-
Nash, would you consider just making this a Warren County only provision, and we can bring it back as an individual item to just be amended in the zoning ordinance later?
It's fine with me.
Yeah, again, because what
I'm
I'm
not
working...
responsible for it, and it's not that I don't care about the
I
county, because I'm
understand.
a resident of the county.
I understand.
But it's not in my purview to attempt to protect the entire
Yeah,
county, so.
we can make this Warren County, and the reason I say that is this permit would be nice if it was in effect by September 1, so the festival promoters can secure their permit from Warren County government. I guess technically the county's passed it, so I guess
They
in
can, I
a sense
think.
it's in effect in the county. I guess maybe Gene, does that
Tam-
work? Or
Tam's still here.
Tam that?
County's adopted it.
Hadn't had to say-
County's
Because I don't think
adopted it.
I'm not aware of any rule that says we all have to have the exact same worded zoning ordinance.
Well, you're right. And that was my fear, is we wouldn't get everything done with all the governments and be ready for the festival. If the county's adopted it, I think then really I'm fine with y'all tabling it.
Can we wait on that till we get to the end here?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, I'm sorry, I was a little premature.
No, that's fine. Anything else on that particular item?
I think I'm done with all my
All right.
summaries of the changes.
Well, if you don't mind me taking the lead, I guess we'll just go backwards from where we were in the plan. That I think the last 3 items that prior to this that Mr. Harmon mentioned were things that we talked about at the regular meeting last time before we tabled it, which had to do with the 2 things, changing the word shall to may on the imposition of local historic guidelines. Doesn't preclude them, doesn't require them if there's not a need for them. I don't know that that was a big issue. We did have a lot of discussion about in the downtown district what's already there and what seemed to be making them unwelcome in some's view about the commercial parking, the banks with the drive-through, and hotels, since they're there or have been there as part of historical in our past history. Not a motel, but a hotel.
Right.
And let's see, and we talked, I went, when we left that meeting that we tabled, I sent Mr. Harmon and you guys a copy of the recommendations that I had. Then I met, you were getting ready to leave town, so I came to the Historic Preservation meeting and met with you and Mr. Moore, the planning and zoning attorney, and Ms. Clements to discuss the questions that we had as a body and that the proposed changes that I was going to recommend at that time. We had, I thought, a pretty good discussion about it. The recommendation that came after that discussion added to, going back to page 7 and 8, which is the 2.5.2, the powers and duties of the board. We had a lengthy discussion about separating the judicial powers or the review powers of the Historic Preservation Board from the advocacy function. We had a long discussion about that and thought we were in pretty good agreement with it. At that time, members of the board were not present and had some questions, and I met with them last night after our summer stroll in a series of meetings, I guess the best way to say, to try to answer their questions. I don't know that we came to a meeting of the minds on the decision about whether or not advocacy function and judicial function can occur in the same body. That, and I still feel that like there's a conflict of interest there, and that's where those recommendations came from on 6, 7, and 8 after talking with Mr. Moore and Ms. Clements and Mr. Hunter. Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add to that part of it?
No, sir. As like the last meeting, the Planning Commission recommendation is all I'm really here to represent. You guys raised some questions about that, and I think then we started from there to try to address number 8. Someone asked me a question, who did what type of things, and then we met and went through it, and I think we fixed it, but an interesting exercise after that, I really checked Miranda's job description, and a lot of the items that are in B are actually, I think, what we would all assume the staff would do. The board wouldn't actually go out and do some of those things, and they're in her job description. But Mr. Moore's here if you want him to sort of describe how he sees this powers and duties, how it evolve or should evolve. He also does orientation for each board member when they come on the board, and we kind of have a lengthy discussion of just the items you raised on the role of the board and the role of different functions of the staff and that type of thing. So again, I'm okay with whatever you guys want to suggest for this section. But what the Planning Commission brought to you was really not much change on that page. Anything you all want to add, I'd be fine with. But I might let Mr. Moore get up and address this page if you want to.
Please, sir.
You want my section here?
Mr. Moore, you were present when we were having the discussion. I think we kind of caught you off guard. You weren't expecting to stay after the meeting. But
yeah, you're right about that. But you, Mayor, did bring up a topic that has been of concern to me, and I haven't turned around, but I assume there's some Historic Preservation Board members in the audience tonight, and they all are sensitive to this issue that has to do with the role as an advocate for historic preservation and their role as an adjudicatory body as it pertains to the granting or denying of certificates of appropriateness, COAs. And there is a tension that happens there when board members are called upon to be advocates for historic preservation and are in the community doing that, fulfilling that role, and then at the same time are called upon to answer questions about whether or not a property owner can do with his or her property what they want to do with it, and that's a very important role that they fulfill, and in order to do it correctly, and they know this, they have to really act more as a juror in a jury sort of setting than they act as advocates for a particular position. So without going any further into that, I think you have identified a dual role that probably is hard to maintain, and so lifting out of their responsibilities and giving to staff those advocacy roles would make me more comfortable with meeting the due process requirements for their adjudicatory roles.
And as I understand, this entire project is, or planning and zoning document is based on out of Chapter 100 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes, which is the zoning ordinance, and not out of 67 and 82, which is where county boards are configured.
That's correct. KRS Chapter 100 enables this is referred to as the zoning regulations. We call it the zoning ordinance, but that enables the passage of this document, and 100 is the enabling legislation.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Moore? Thank you, sir. I've submitted these, and I think, is it you, Donna? Are you coming up?
Yeah.
Okay. Or Eric, either one? Eric, if you'd like to go first, please identify yourself for the minutes.
Hi, I'm Eric Reed. I live at 1405 State. I'm a current member of the Historic Preservation Board and a former chair of the Historic Preservation Board. And I want to thank you, Mayor, for meeting with some of us last night. It was very refreshing to have a frank conversation about this. And I think I can speak for myself to say that I'm kind of concerned about several of these changes. I think you're right to say that we don't really have a meeting of the minds about the purpose of historic preservation and that kind of thing. But I also don't think that our differences are insurmountable. But first of all, let me tell you about some of my concerns. Specifically, and I want to make sure that I actually understand what some of the changes are, because in my understanding is that Section 2.5, which is the membership of the historic preservation.
Refer to your pages that you're looking at, please. That way we can follow you.
Let's see, actually, I don't have
If
the
you have them, I don't.
pages with me.
Page 7.
Page 7.
They may not coincide, but it's on page 7 in the middle.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I did mean, if I could
thank you.
interrupt
I
you just
appreciate
a
that.
moment there, Eric, that you're talking about the membership.
Mhm.
That was a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission
Right.
from its original process, but go ahead.
And I wish I had been involved in this process of revising these a little bit earlier. I just only became aware of some of these changes on Sunday, so that's why I'm here instead of at the Planning and Zoning Board. So anyway, I have several concerns. One is about 2.5.1 on page 7, which is the changes that are recommended to membership. Essentially, what is being proposed is to remove the requirement that members of the Historic Preservation Board have some kind of knowledge or interest in historic preservation. I'll get back to why that's a concern to me in a second. The powers and duties in page 7 and page 8, section 2.5.2. Again, I think that when the term advocacy is used, the way that I understand that is that the Historic Preservation Board is in part meant to educate the public about what historic preservation is. When we meet with our neighbors in our local historic districts and they say, what is historic preservation, we tell them. And that's what I consider to be an advocacy. We don't, and I can see very clearly the difference between me telling my neighbors what they might need to know about historic preservation and my role as somebody who has to sit in judgment of what they want to do to their houses. In fact, I went through the process myself with an addition that was put on my house a number of years ago, and it was a very refreshing process, and I really felt that the education process, the education that I went through in that process was very valuable. The other section is, make sure, I wish I had the pages here, and I'm sorry I don't.
Tell me what it is and I'll identify it for them.
3.14.12,
Hold on
the
just a
decision-making process and appeals process.
3.14.
3.14.12.
Page 24.
21.
I wish I had the page numbers. I don't know if you can help me with it.
Yes, it's on page 24, 2/3 of the way down. It's under appeals.
There's appeals and, yeah, the decision-making process.
Yeah.
And, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. No, I guess let me tell you what I'd like you to do, and then I'll tell you why I'd like you to do that. I'm hoping that you might follow the same process that you just did with the permits issue and table these particular parts until perhaps more review has happened. Okay.
Perhaps more what?
More review happens, perhaps some revision to the proposed language. A lot of us on the Historic Preservation Board were rushing around trying to figure out what to do when we learned about these changes. And again, I wish we'd been involved in them a little bit earlier, but we only learned of them this last weekend. We rushed, and Chairman Wolbe had the foresight to contact the State Historic Planning, the Heritage Council, Kentucky Heritage Council. And they've actually told us that some of these changes may result in Bowling Green losing a very valuable status, which is certified local government status in their eyes, which allows us to participate in state and federal grants related to local historic preservation, some of which could be worth tens of thousands of dollars. That we will also lose other kinds of opportunities to, if we lose the certified local government status, to participate in National Register process of nominating properties for the National Historic Register, and all kinds of other things which are outlined in a letter. So they specifically pointed to the issue of membership. The historic preservation boards need to have members who are knowledgeable and interested in preservation. They pointed to the problem of the appeals process and decision making, and how the wording here seems to create ambiguity that could lead to, depending on how it's interpreted or applied, that could lead to the Historic Preservation Board being circumvented as part of the judicial process in certain circumstances. So I guess my concerns are, I mean, we can put philosophy aside and rather than argue about that, but there are certain practical things that I think that we can come to a meeting of the minds about that would still preserve perhaps your desire or the Commission's desire to separate in some ways the advocacy and judicial functions. And I think the language in those sections that I pointed to really needs some work. It's my understanding that our historic preservation planner, Miranda Clemens, actually has some proposed language that I think might meet in the middle a little bit. And so I'd like to, if possible, delay that part of, have you do the same process that was done before, pull those out of consideration for tonight and approve them in a reasonable time, possibly even before September 1st. I think the board, if we can do a quick called meeting within a week, whatever the legal requirements for that would be, we could come up with some ideas about how to revise this language. Anyway, I appreciate you taking some time.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, and Ms. Wolbe's recommendations were on your desk when you came up here. I think I have one for you, Mr. DeFebo, as well. Who's next? Mr. Sinclair, if you identify yourself for them, please.
Sean Sinclair. I live at 1318 College Street. I'm also a historic preservation member.
Sean, will you give me that address again?
1318 College.
Thank you.
Just two quick things. One, under the advising and assisting, in addition.
Hang on a minute. Let's
sorry,
go back to where
page 8.
Page 8, number 7.
Number 7.
Yeah, at the top of the page, number 7.
Are we there?
Yes, sir.
I'm also on the University District Board. I'm also the chairperson for a professional sports committee that has over 50,000 members. I'm also on 3 other committees with that association. And the advising and assisting seems to be a little tricky because every board, in a way, is advising and assisting. You guys are sitting up here tonight, and one of these items comes before you, and you have questions, and then you make suggestions. That's the same thing our board is also doing. And I've gone before the Board of Adjustments. I built the garage back on College Street, and every single member up there asked questions, gave advice, and that's the same thing that each one of us is doing. So I'm not quite sure why that needs to be removed. But then my main question is the Historic Preservation Committee and Board has been around for 30 years. We pointed out in our meeting last night that in the last 5 years, there has not been a single denial of any applicant. So my question is, why now? Why the change? And what's the proof? What's your reasoning? And do you have specific examples why we need this change?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Would you interpret, sir, the board's role and the individuals that sit on that board as a judge and jury? In other words, it appears that technical information is given out from each one of you as a board member, and Miranda as the professional, as well as you as a board member, is there to hear evidence and serve as a juror of same. Would that be an appropriate observation? Let me maybe go a little further. All of us at one time used to sit on boards. I used to sit on a university district board. Something came up before that board. I can't remember whether it came to the city commission, but all of us sit on boards where we down here acting as a board member of that particular board, and we cut that request, proposal, whatever, has to come to the city commission, and we sit up here as members, and we've already made a decision down there, and we're having to make a decision up here. We served as a juror down there, and we're serving as a judge up here to approve whatever we had already been involved in down there. Would you say that that board operates in that fashion?
Better qualified to answer.
Well, I'm Miranda Clemens, and I'm the Historic Preservation Planner. And historic preservation boards, I think how they're set up, it's outlined in the Certified Local Government Regulations, which say that this language has to be in the ordinance that permits historic preservation in the districts. But basically, historic preservation boards, the way I understand it, and from my research, if you follow due process and apply the design guidelines similarly to all your applicants and follow the same procedures, then that is defensible that would stand up in court. Historic preservation boards all across this state and the country are set up as ours is now, with this language, and the board members have these qualifications and backgrounds. It's made up of a board that has experience, expertise, background in historic preservation. They use the design guidelines to make decisions on each of the cases that come before them. And when property owners come before them, the staff does a staff report that's the same in every case with every applicant, every property owner, and then it comes before the board. I don't think it is, as you're saying, as the judiciary process as much. I mean, this is just the way historic preservation boards are set up, and it's been held up in courts across the country. So,
I guess my concern is that you're the professional person for the Historic Preservation Board, and you have board members that are giving advice to prospective applicants on their particular projects?
No, so that basically, if there's a particular project, they do not talk to the applicants about that project. The only time they would discuss a particular project is at the Historic Preservation Board meeting. They wouldn't. They get the packet just like the Planning Commission does. It's a certain number of days ahead of the meeting, And they know they do not talk to the applicant because that'd be ex parte communication, which they are very knowledgeable about. So.
And you are not a member of that board?
No.
Are you the only staff person?
Yes.
So you make a recommendation based on your professional expertise and so on to the board for them to make a decision on?
Yes. Basically, I take the application, I apply the design guidelines, I go through the same process with every single application and then send it to them, and then I do a staff report, a PowerPoint, go through the property, through the design guidelines, the other factors that the zoning ordinance states that we need to follow, such as the visibility of the project, where it's located in the district, and the significance of the property, and architectural style, that kind of thing.
I heard two of the members here say that they received training now. I interpreted that as a training in historic preservation, that they were there to advise individuals. Did I understand that wrong?
Well, I think what they're trying to say is that with the Historic Preservation Board, if we have, if a case comes before them and it's not, design review does not work as some of the cases with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has standards that say, you know, a setback must be 10 feet. So if it's 6 feet, it doesn't meet that setback. With the design review, it works in that you apply the design guidelines similarly to all projects. So if there's a guideline that says the, original, let me think, porches should be, the porch is an important part of the house and should be preserved, and if a property owner comes in and wants to enclose that porch, then the board can, through this, well, the staff, first I would look at the case and go and meet them at the house and try and look at an alternative to enclosing the front porch, something that would meet the guidelines. And then when all of the information is there, if the applicant still wants to proceed with that, it would go before the board, and in the meeting they may use their expertise in explaining the the importance of the front porch and the character of it, why it's important.
Does the board members advise that applicant on the do's and don'ts of a project, or do they tell them they need to see Miranda, our professional?
That's what, yes, they would say, talk to Miranda. I'm the staff person that can meet them at the property and give the information. The board members don't. Really, how it works is that if the board the board, I take all the information and, like I said, and prepare a case for the board, and then they review it. During the review, though, they need to understand historic properties, historic materials, architectural styles, and that type of thing to be able to apply the guidelines. One thing that comes up quite often is substitute, well, actually, without getting into all of that, that's...
You all right?
So.
Okay. That's all I got, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clements. Do you have something else, Mr. Sinclair?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to my original question of, if it's not broken, what do we have to fix? It's been working for 30 years. The last 5 years, it's been exceptional. Where's the evidence that we need to change this? What do we have any specific examples? Anything? Why do we need to change this?
Okay, well, we'll let the next person come on up and talk, and then we'll get into some discussion. Miss Donna, full
Hi,
name.
my name's Donna Porter Walby, and I live at 2927 Ewing Ford Road. And I'm on the Historic Preservation Board. I'm the chair by default. But anyway, I'm going to talk in a little less technical terms And I wanted them to do all the hard part before I got up here, so that's the reason I wanted them to go first. But Commissioner Denny, I would like to directly attempt to answer the question you asked about if we had served on another board, we'd ruled on an issue, then it came before our board. That would be a situation where we would have to recuse ourselves. We would not, and I think that has actually happened in the past. Thank you for the nods. But bottom line is that we would not even get involved in a situation where we had a conflict. So I hope that answers your question. One of the things I want to do with y'all tonight is I want to let y'all know what the last few days have been like. You may have noticed a lot of shuffling of paper. You may have noticed that we weren't very prepared and that we really didn't even know what had been proposed. We didn't know until, I didn't know until Friday afternoon what had been proposed to you all. Okay? What has been proposed not only is very scary to us, but it actually completely tests the question of whether we are a historic preservation board. We definitely won't be recognized within the state or the national level with any sort of credibility. And we can get into all the technical part of that, but again, we don't have really time to do that. We have not had time to talk to you all. Now, when I found this out on Friday, I did what the only thing I knew to do was, and that was to pick up the telephone and call the public servants that I felt I could call at home on the weekend and disrupt everything because we didn't have any time. And again, I'm glad for Mayor Wilkerson's time that you spent with us last night in our small groups. But again, I don't want you all to think that this wasn't important to us, that we didn't come to the work session when this was introduced, or that we weren't at the July 17th meeting when you discussed for 30 minutes historic preservation. We just didn't know about it. And that's my big exception here. And I'm afraid that what you all are going to be forced with doing is voting on something that you really don't have all the information. And that's the scary part, I think, to homeowners who have huge investments in historic preservation. And those are the people you're going to have to answer to. And I hate to be so blunt, but that is sort of the case. So when one of the questions that was asked of me, I can't even remember who asked it, but did we not, didn't we have conversations about what was going into the changes? And yes, we did, about the design guidelines. But the design guidelines, for those of you, just for the sake of semantics, the design guidelines talk about awnings and porches and siding. And we worked on those things really hard in February and March. And the reason we were doing it was to try to align the historic preservation guidelines with the local zoning guidelines, because we had some misinterpretations and some overlap. So we really wanted to try to get those things aligned, and that's what we worked on. So that's what we thought was coming before you all. So I feel like everybody here is at a disadvantage. We're at a disadvantage because we've not been able to speak at length with anybody except Mayor Wilkerson. And even still, there are some people that need to come behind us to validate what we're saying. And you all are really not going to be able to vote with the amount of knowledge you need to. There are some very serious issues here, and there are some serious repercussions.
So what are you, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Sure.
So what are you suggesting as the chair of your board? That the whole document be looked at a later date by the city commission based on some of the things the city manager has already said that he would like to do, and what is the request?
Well, I'm not sure who said what and when or what y'all have seen and that sort of thing. Again, time has been a really disadvantage. Because the precedent has already been set tonight to set aside certain portions, that is exactly what my request was. to Mayor Wilkerson when I called him on Saturday afternoon, was to please set aside just the section as it pertains to the Historic Preservation Board so that we have time to talk to you about it and that we have time to examine it ourselves and find out seriously what the repercussions are going to be. Because this is going to affect a lot of people. So my recommendation specifically, Commissioner Denning, would be that we do that first. And then and I think what we did is we got some information to you all today. I don't know how many of you even have time to look through it all. But it basically leaves us in the position to be people on the board with a background, experience, education, or at the very least an interest in historic preservation. And also that we are allowed to, to keep intact our review process. And let me just real quickly tell you exactly what that is. And this is going to be a real short version, I promise. I've already totally gone off my notes. But typically what happens, and I think because there's even a misunderstanding of the process, that sort of proves to me that we aren't ready for a vote on this. The process is that let's say somebody wants to make do something like paint or put on a new porch or do something, and you're in a historic district. What you do is you make application, it goes before Miranda. Miranda spends bukus of time with the applicant and talks to them about all the different options they have. Now, this is not something that was mentioned earlier about your opinion and your this and your. We go by the guidelines, strictly by the guidelines. And these are not our guidelines, but they're state and national guidelines. So anyway, that goes before Miranda. If it's a simple, easy case where it follows all the guidelines, it's no problem. She gives it staff approval. She brings it to our board, much like you all have, I'm sure, and other boards that you've sat on before, and this one also. And we just see it as a staff approval. The only problem is that sometimes there are issues that she's not able to work with the applicant on. She talks to them, they still want to do it a certain way, and it is in opposition to the guidelines. Those are the cases that we see. And as Sean said, we sat around last night in small groups, and we could not think of a single case that we had denied in the past 4 or 5 years. So we're a little concerned about what the uproar here is and why we want to change what's working. But if an applicant comes to our board, the beauty of our board and the reason it works is because pretty much everybody on the board has experience in doing their own properties or with something, a background or something. And we're able to talk to the applicant about absolutes. This worked, that worked, have you tried this? There are certain people that have experience. We know there's someone that lives at such and such address. Have you spoken with them? Have you gone over and looked at what they've done? And that's the reason our board works. We get, people learn things from it. If you try to align us with all the other boards, it ain't going to work. You're not going to have a historic preservation board. That's not who we are. We are advocates. We do work with people to try to help them stay within the guidelines and conform. And that's why we've been successful. So I'm asking you to defer this, pull it out just like you did the other ordinance, and give us time to talk to you. We'd like to spend time. Those of you who didn't get phone calls from me over the weekend, there's always next week if you'll just do this. So that's my. Are any questions?
Ms. Walby?
Yes. I have some questions. One of the things that I really have three things that I want to address. You said that there are serious issues, serious repercussions. I'd like to hear what those are. You also indicated that you go strictly by the guidelines. I recently heard of a law firm that sits right here on 10th Street who wanted to make changes to the windows on the...
That one is still ongoing. That case still...
There's a second part to that, and I'm not sure we should...
I can't.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd rather not talk about a pending case.
Okay.
I would love to talk to you at length about that at some point so you'll understand it from start to finish, but we're being advised to hold down.
Sorry. You have another point?
Are there times that your board has not gone strictly by the guidelines?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm not giving you an absolute there, Commissioner, but I really don't think there is a case. And if you all had, excuse me?
And how long?
Probably, well, since Miranda's been here.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the problem too. We're living with the past.
Okay.
So.
Serious issues, serious repercussions.
As I mentioned, and as I think everybody's mentioned a little portion of this, when we remove the portions, and again, now who's got the paperwork, the initial section where you take out what the membership and the makeup of the board is, and that and 2 or 3 other issues, removes us from the certified local government designation. And that...
We know that for a fact.
You have a letter.
There's a letter in the packet. But
yeah,
it's not a fact. It would start the process if they felt it.
Right.
Right. We were able, on short time notice, to get in touch with the staff attorney for the Kentucky Heritage Council, who was very, very concerned, and I'm telling you that because I spoke with her myself, but we'd love to bring her here and let you all speak with her.
Would you consider her also an advocate?
Of course.
Therein lies my rub. I don't think you can be advocate, judge, and jury. I surely wouldn't want to appear in a court of law where the police officer who arrested me was a member of the jury, and if he didn't like what the jury had to say, got to be the judge.
You're assuming we're bad people.
I'm not assuming that you're bad people.
That's what it sounded like.
I'm not assuming that everybody who's arrested is guilty, but I'll bet you dollars to donuts that police officer thinks they are.
The difference there, Commissioner Nash, is that we are on the side of the applicant every time we can be. Our attorney reminds us at every meeting that our job is to do everything we can to meet the applicant. And we can talk about specifics at a later date. But again, we could be here all night talking about this. My point is, you don't have all the information.
Well, what information don't we have?
Well, first of all, I don't feel like there's a clear understanding that the Historic Preservation Board is not in the same category as the Board of Adjustments or a court of law. It's not the same thing. We are there to help people do the right thing with their properties within guidelines. First of all, let's back up a second.
Can I ask you a question there, if you
Sure.
don't mind me interrupting you, Donna? You believe that it's the board's responsibility to provide that advice and guidance as opposed to the staff person who works with the applicant to try to get the application to the point of acceptance or compliance, rather?
As I described a minute ago, the process, Miranda does meet with them, does explain, does try to help them. It often has to come before our board where there are actual people who have had those situations and can talk one-on-one in the setting and describe things to them that often Miranda can't do. She can talk about the guidelines, but she can't always say to them, I did this. Let me tell you how it worked. Let me tell you how undisruptive it was. Let me tell you how little it cost.
I'm sorry, go
ahead. I don't feel like I answered something you said.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on what additional information we need.
Okay. I think that what we need to be able to do is come and bring you the information about the detriment to us as a designated historic preservation board, both in certification and also in reputation. Right now, Miranda has the ear of everybody in the country if she wants it. Always there are changes to materials, techniques, all kinds of ways that have been approved, things that have been tested. And she has the ear of people all over the country, so we can disseminate this information to people when they come to us. We consider that our jobs.
And that would change how?
With the elimination of the certified local government designation.
But we don't know that that's going to happen. Well, no, I don't know. The sun's going to rise tomorrow, but I'm going to make plans to go forward despite that.
I'm not going to try to answer a question that an expert needs to be here to talk about, because you're right. I can't answer that.
But then that speaks directly to membership for me. On one hand, you're arguing that you need to have members who have certain specifications, but then when questions are asked, you argue that you're not the person to be able to answer that question. Mr. Sinclair was asked a question by Commissioner Denning about whether or not he thought he acted as both, in advocate, judge, and jury. He turned around and deferred the answer to that question to somebody else. I mean, if somebody asks me what my role on this board is, I'm going to be able to tell them what my role on this board is. I'm not going to need to defer to anybody else. I'm asking you questions, and you tell me that you need somebody else with greater expertise. And I appreciate you not just answering the question, but you can't argue on one hand you have to have this fabulous expertise in order to be on the board, but yet when you're asked questions, you're not prepared to answer them because you don't have the expertise.
You're talking specifically about two different types of information.
Okay.
Had we known that this was being proposed to you tonight, we would have been better educated about this. You can be sure of it. But we didn't.
But you would have been better educated about what?
About the legalities we're talking about the technical things. These are not even things that Mr. Moore can answer, because these are not things we've had to address before. These are very unusual situations. There are 23 cities in Kentucky that have historic preservation boards, and none of them have had this issue. None of their local governments have asked them to water down what they do and become something that they were never designed to be.
How many cities are there in Kentucky?
We're talking 23 of the largest cities.
I just wondered I don't know how many cities there are in Kentucky.
Well,
to have a
I don't know
gauge.
either.
400 and some.
400 and some. So we have 23 of 400 and some.
It's Louisville, Lexington. I mean, I have a partial list, but they're the larger cities that have reason to have historic designations or historic preservation boards. Not all our cities do that.
Okay. Mr. Hunter, there was a time when there was discussion that was occurring up here, and I saw you shaking your head no.
Oh, I'm just frustrated a little bit. I apologize for the earlier comment. This has been a touchy situation. It has been kind of a firestorm the last few days. And again, I guess I've been caught off guard. I was out of town last week, and I didn't know till today that there was an issue with the temporary use permit, and I didn't know till today. Well, I knew the Friday, as the mayor knew before, that you all raised these questions July 17th. What we brought to you had very little change on this page, if you remember. And then someone asked me a question about who initiates plans. And I think it just got to the heart of what you all are saying is the staff plays a role, the board plays a role. Our attorney, who staffs the board, I think clearly came up here and he can again and described what he thinks how they should serve, similar to what Commissioner Denning, that they're the judge and jury, like the Planning Commission, like the Board of Adjustments, like the Design Review Board, and the staff is the staff, like I'm the staff to the Planning Commission. And they're supposed to come in and sit in a hearing and rule fairly, hear the evidence, make a ruling. It gets confusing when the board wants to also advise and be public, proponents for historic preservation when their main duty based on the zoning ordinance is to come in and hear COAs. There's other things, of course, they want to do, but I'm looking at the zoning ordinance holistically and thinking that one duty that's in there, number 4, is the most important to me. They have to hear COAs and do that. The issue, when I think I shook my head, Commissioner Nash, is there was a discussion about how COAs are heard and when they come to the board. This is the perfect time for this housekeeping exercise because there has been some inconsistencies. One of the inconsistencies is the ordinance allows staff approvals of COAs and board approvals of COAs. And it's very clear in Article 3 of which ones are staff approved, which ones are board approved. When they're staff approved, the way I understand it, Mr. Moore can comment, is they're supposed to vote it up or down, or approve it up or down, and that's appealable as an administrative appeal to the Board of Adjustments. That's in the state law, that's in Article 3. There's no deviating from that option. When the board hears a case, when it's their turn to hear a certain kind of COA, They can vote it up or down, and that's appealable to court. There's been process here where we do administrative approvals, and when they're approvable, we pass them. But when they're not approvable, we send them to the board when they should have been administrative denial. And what that does is just hand the board a negotiation on a case that should have been just probably denied by the staff and told the applicant, hey, you're going to have to figure something else out. We have been inconsistent on that. It's very clear in Article 3 how that process is laid out, but yet we're still growing as a board and as a staff, figuring out whose roles are what. What's in Article 2 as far as the duties, I think you've heard most of these items are in Miranda's job description. I think there was a time when this was created where we had no staff, and we did a kind of a cookie cutter ordinance. We put it in the zoning ordinance, and at some point, when I first got to the Planning Commission in the late 90s, I think we had a part-time historic preservation planner. At one time, we didn't have a historic preservation planner, so maybe the board did play a different role. But over time, you guys have increased funding. The Planning Commission has taken the whole product in-house, and now we have full-time staff, other support staff. And I think now it's very clear, as the job description evolves, several of these bullets are in the job description, and they're clearly the staff's duties. I didn't recommend any changes, but it was brought up, and I think the suggestion now is to eliminate a few of these because they're in actually Miranda's job description. If the board wants to work and advise with the federal folks, again, I'm going to defer to our attorney on what he thinks their role should be in being a hearing board or working under these other items. I would assume Miranda would do items 6, 7, and 8 on a daily basis. It's in her job description.
So what you're saying, if I can interrupt you, Steve,
Sure.
is that historic preservation won't be watered down or eliminated. It's just that the roles are greater defined, where the board sits in the judicial part and Miranda will do the administrative and preparatory part that the board had assumed previously.
And I think we do that. I go back to what board member Sean Sinclair said. I think we do that. But unfortunately, the ordinance doesn't say that. Someone raised a question, it's kind of vague, who does what? I think the staff does number 8 every single time. The board clearly doesn't go out and initiate those plans. We do those as a staff. But it's worded in here as the board duty, and rightfully it probably needs to be in the job description and not under the board duty. If you turn, you don't have that section, but the Planning Commission duties, there's clearly not this many bullets under their duties or the Board of Adjustments. Pretty clear role we define. And again, I'm going to defer to Mr. Moore's advice on the role he sees the board ought to play in serving as a hearing board and follow his advice. I'm really not an expert in that area, obviously.
Before you go that route, is there, the question has been brought about the certified local government.
I'm not an expert on that. I don't doubt either side. That I didn't see the letter. It wasn't sent to me. I was not part of any of these discussions or several of the emails, Mayor, I didn't have till you sent them to me from the board to Miranda. I wasn't even in the loop on some of these till today. I could imagine that they possibly could change our status. I would think that if they thought that we were taking one of the bullets out of the zoning ordinance, we could very easily show them it's in the job description.
That's what I was going to ask you. When we finish with this exercise here, would you consider taking that step to follow through and ensure that the purpose of any of these changes is not to diminish
Absolutely.
with regard to historic preservation in our community? It's only to ensure that the general public feels like that they come and have a fair and objective hearing on their certificate of appropriateness, as opposed to going to judge, jury, both in the same.
That was never the intent. Again, I don't see that we made many changes except, and I can tell you on the membership issue up there, that initiated with the staff. Miranda sat in on the meetings with 7 other Planning Commission staff members. We started in January, 8 staff members, and went through this book line by line, as I told you guys back when I made the first presentation. And we went through this, started with 1 and 2. So this was sometime back in February or March or something of that nature. And we went through. At that time, there was some discussion about Smiths Grove and Oakland joining the board, possibly because they were interested in creating a local historic district maybe in Smiths Grove. At that time, it was brought up that the membership seemed somewhat limiting, and if we could open up the appointment pool, it might help those smaller towns. But we ended up changing that, and you can see we added item A where we just gave jurisdiction to create the boards in those other cities, but we left the membership stuff struck through. It makes no difference really to me on that issue, but I know way on back that was struck because we thought, well, what if the mayor of Smiths Grove wanted to appoint somebody, that type of thing.
Okay.
It never changed after that point from back in late winter.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, let me ask this. I have a feeling that we're going to be here all night.
Well, I was getting ready to wind it up. That's what I was.
Can we go ahead and ask the staff and the board, city manager to do his thing, and Mr. Moore and Mr. Harmon get together if they need to, and we can move on?
Well, I think that we have done that. I think basically the difference is a difference in approach for the board's responsibilities, and if that dies for lack of a second, it dies for lack of a second. But I'm going to go ahead and move that for this first reading, which does not. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm just reading this letter from Roger Stapleton. We've been arguing, debating, discussing, whatever. The removal of the members shall have demonstrated interest in historic preservation, and at least 2 members shall have training or experience in a preservation-related profession, architecture, history, archaeology, architectural history, construction planning, or related fields. I go to the letter. The letter references the National Historic Preservation Act of 1996. Under E, all it says is all commission members must have a demonstrated interest, competence, or knowledge in historic preservation. I'm somewhat frustrated we've spent that much time arguing over the removal of language that's not even in the law, but I've been told repeatedly tonight that if this is removed, all hell's going to break loose. And it's not. It's not. It's not in here.
Commissioner Nash, another small issue. I know we want to wrap up, but the certified local government, Miranda's an expert at that. She'd have to explain the ramifications there. But I can tell you, as far as the grant funding, we used to get a $10,000 grant that years ago we used to basically reimburse the Planning Commission for personnel costs. The state changed the rules on us and basically said that grant can only be used for education or consultants or hiring other folks, but we basically can't pay a portion of Miranda's salary or those type of things. So we basically suspended the grant application a few years back. We don't even apply for the grant due to the match and the paperwork and the fact that we can't use it for the need that we use it for, which is personnel. So there's other ramifications, I'm sure, but as far as the grant source itself, the Planning Commission is no longer applying for that grant either. But I would not want to see the certified local government status stripped away from the city if that was a real risk, and I would suggest we'd want to make sure the ordinance secures that if that's what we need to do, but I don't know if that's a possibility or not. But that's something we'd be glad to check, and Miranda should check on, and we can make sure, because I think we got a lot of this language either in her job description or in other policy documents. The bylaws, for example, have a lot of things in it. So I'm not that worried that what's in this parent ordinance is that detrimental. It feels to me like a housekeeping exercise, like I mentioned. And again, we didn't recommend any changes till it was brought up, and your all's suggestions I'm pretty comfortable with if Mr. Moore feels he is. Now this appeal process that was brought up, I'm very clear on has to stay worded like it is in Article 3. Unfortunately, administrative appeals for staff reviews have to go to the Board of Adjustments, according to our attorney, what he's explained to me. The board appeals go to court. And that's how it's worded now in Article 3 for clarity for applicants to know there are 2 kinds of appeals. And I'll just leave it at that. The rest of this stuff gets outside of my realm of expertise.
Okay, I think Mr. Walter has a comment before I make a motion.
I agree. I believe I agree with Joe. I think that the board obviously is concerned about these things, and I believe I agree with the way that with way it's been presented? I think I do, but I'm not sure. I think I agree with Mr. Moore as far as the duties, but I'm not sure. Therefore, what I would like to see is for us to table these items related tonight and give this group a chance. I think they deserve the chance to get more organized and come back, whatever that is. And again, even if I didn't need more information, I think I would be inclined to believe that. At least give them the chance to come back and be prepared. And even if you don't get the ruling that you want, at least you all have had the opportunity to do your best. And so and I don't know if that's what Joe was saying.
Exactly. Everybody has got something to say. I think the board needs to get with Miranda, Steve, and when they're ready, come back before the city commission, and that way there's no question that everybody's together and everybody's on the same page. Nobody's on the same page here tonight. And we could talk forever and we'll never come to a conclusion as to what is right and what is wrong. So let's get together. I don't want to hear it again until everything is together out there. Whatever goes on out there, let it go on. I don't want to hear it before that. There's no need in us having but one more meeting, and that way we know everybody's together on what is going to be presented at that time.
I think the issue there is that the comprehensive plan becomes effective September 1st, which renders our current ordinance out of date. And
somebody better
then
get to
that
work.
would be, I beg your pardon?
Somebody better get to work.
Well, that means we'll have to have a special session and 2 readings if that's your desire.
Oh, I don't. It doesn't bother me that we've got to have 2 meetings, but it does bother me that everybody's not together, and including us. I'm like Bill and Slim. Hell, I'm more confused now after all the conversations here than I was before.
Joe, just for the sake of clarity, our issue that Gino and I raised are separable from this issue.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. But you are part of the process. You are the top dog, as Jerry Clower used to say. You the top dog in this situation for the city of Bowling Green.
Actually, you're the top dog because this is clearly a policy decision about what you guys want to do about historical preservation. It might be much ado about nothing if we can just compromise and work out language.
I agree. I think we're having a lot of conversation for no reason at all. And to me, this can be worked out to the approval of everybody here tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I believe we've discussed this from last meeting to this meeting. And the way I've understood tonight, if we weren't fortunate enough to have Miranda on staff, then the Historic Preservation Board would have a different role. They would have a lot of these things, but the things that we are taking out of this are things that Miranda does. So to me, it's a duplication of services. But I believe this would be different if we didn't have Miranda, but since we do, I'm in favor of moving on and passing this.
Yes, sir.
He wanted to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Sloan, I apologize. I didn't see you.
No offense is taken, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Jay Sloan at 636 East 13th Street. I have the privilege of living in a house that is celebrating its 100th birthday this year. I do have an interest in this question. I was a founding member of the Landmark Association more than 30 years ago. And of course, you know that my spouse was involved in city government. And therefore, I never took the role of a board member or the presidency of one of those organizations, which does not suggest in the least that I was not interested or that I did not follow them. I would urge you to give very careful consideration before you leap into changing a process and a system and a history which has paid wonderful benefits to the city of Bowling Green. Now, have people been disappointed, upset, angered, perhaps even made furious by their encounters with the Historic Preservation Board? Damn right. But maybe that was the correct decision. To be told no is not any evidence necessarily that the person who told you no made a mistake. Further, I would say that this notion that there is a clear distinction between, quote, advocacy and judging is utterly false. I have had the occasion to appear before zoning board hearings and Board of Adjustment hearings and have received or have witnessed the receipt of careful, sometimes extensive suggestions from board members who believed that was part of their job. And it was. To believe that they're going to sit there in some sort of judicial robe, it's just not a human response to the situation. They want to be helpful. They like to make suggestions. My God, would you want to appoint people who weren't in that mode? I think not. I think not. So don't get hung up on this distinction, because I don't think that it serves you or the community well. Just my observations.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Sloan.
time.
Appreciate it. I'm sorry, did you have something else to say, or you just did the thing? Okay.
Excuse me.
I understand the desire to, yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to ask if, really, it seems to be a very simple thing. With the Historic Preservation Board, if you could just leave the language in there about the qualifications. And then with the 2.5.2, with the powers and duties, in the first paragraph, just say the Preservation Board and or staff as appropriate. And then leave those things in there. I came up with a draft that responded to the concerns of the mayor and Steve and Hamp that I thought met, your concerns. And it's just simple. It makes the changes, but it keeps this intact so that we maintain our certification as a local, certified local government. So that's what I'd like to just request. It's a very simple thing. I think it's been blown way out of proportion. So thank you. And if you'd like to, this was my version of what of all the pages.
Kate, there you go.
All right, I've not heard a motion on the floor at this point, but I really am thinking that probably we ought to move on with it, with the September 1st deadline, indicate in understanding that between the first and the second reading, we do have an opportunity to make adjustments, minor adjustments, that would not require a second reading, but does give us 2 weeks.
There can't be substantive changes, and some of these, I don't know, of course I don't know what the changes will be, but if you make substantive changes between the first and second reading, then you have to do another amended first reading.
Mm-hmm. And if there are not substantive changes between them, then we could proceed with that second reading in 2 weeks. Yes, sir.
Would I be out of order if I propose a motion to table the issues related to the Historic Preservation Board?
You can make any motion.
You can A motion to table
First
supersedes
time I've been out
whatever
of order in a while, Joe.
would supersede anything else, and there's no discussion on a motion to table.
No, once you get a motion second, there's not.
Second.
But, okay. Well, go ahead, because we need to make sure we know what we're tabling, because historic preservation is in multiple sections. You're talking about all historic preservation
Historic
language.
preservation, all.
All of it.
That way we're covering everything.
And what about the part he wanted?
Well, Kevin, that's a different section.
Why not? But didn't we want it tabled too? Didn't he want it?
Yeah.
I personally think the thing that with Steve brought up, the simple word of county would be, I don't know if that's a material change or not. Steve had a good idea to put the word county in there.
Well, if they're tabling, you just might as well wait anyhow.
Okay.
Just a simple fix would be to approve all the articles as named except Article 2 and 5. That lets us table everything in Article 2, which was the majority of this discussion. The temporary use permit was in Article 5, plus a lot of other stuff, but we'll just bring it back another day. You guys could approve Articles 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and appendices.
There's not a...
Don't approve Article 2 or 5. That covers
Article 2, not Section 2, but Article 2.
Article 2, the whole article. There's other stuff in there, but we'll just bring it back a different day. That catches all the board duties. Article 5 catches a temporary use permit, plus a lot of other stuff on bed and breakfasts. We'll just bring it back another day. We'll go back and get Articles 2 and 5. We may even take them back to the Planning Commission and have a new hearing if you want. I'm fine with that too, and take it all back through the process. But unfortunately, the county's already passed it as it's stated, so I'm going to have to get Mr. Moore's advice on that. But if you approve 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and the appendices, we won't touch the board stuff, and we won't touch the temporary use permit in Article 5.
But everything in Article 3 dealing with historical preservation is okay?
Yeah, it wasn't even discussed tonight except the appeal issue, and I'm firm on that. I mean, that on my attorney's advice, that has to be worded that way.
I think
There's
we're getting
nothing else.
questionable looks in the back, so I don't know.
Well, the appeal goes to the Board of Adjustment for administrative approvals. That's a
Is that what your
solution.
motion will be?
If Gene's is the issue with whatever's in 3, are there issues that the board members have with it?
Sure they do,
I mean,
Laws of law.
I understand what you're saying.
So we're seeing
Okay,
2
so you're
and
2 and 5. Is that what your motion is?
Yes, and if I mess this up, we can always do it on the second reading, I guess, but yes, that would amend.
You're all right with that, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's no discussion. Please call the roll.
A yes vote is to
Table sections 2 and 5. Thank you.
And
Now, the rest of it, we have to address
in a minute.
in a moment. This is just a table section 2
Can I
and
just-
5 only.
Has the county approved everything we're looking at?
Yes.
and other cities have to.
Not the proposed additional amendments. Just with the
Did the
planning commission
county
recommending.
approve what's in red?
Only in section 1.13.
Okay.
May I make a comment before we...
Sure, everybody else is out of order. Go right ahead.
I'll tell you, I'm so comfortable with this. I'm ready to vote on it. In deference, in the interest of transparency, I will go along with Waltrip and Denning and tabling this to allow people to have an opportunity to look at it. I want to be honest with you. I want to be forthright. My opinion, I just cannot possibly imagine it changing. But if a week or 2 weeks buys you some peace of mind, it doesn't mean that I won't listen to you. I'll listen to you no matter what. I've listened to you tonight. I've listened to you carefully, and I have to be honest with you, listening to you carefully has just reaffirmed my decisions. But I don't want to be accused of rushing to judgment. I don't know why we're rushing to judgment. We discussed this 3 weeks ago. I don't know where the ball got dropped on that. But in the interest of transparency and due process, which I believe I'm arguing here anyway, I will support the motion to table.
Can I get
Okay.
one? I know we shouldn't be discussing, I don't know what that, but we need to make sure are we tabling all of Articles 2 and 5?
Yes.
Or just the historic preservation
No,
parts of those two?
I would suggest you table everything in Article 2, and I'm not even sure what else we're tabling, but I can figure it out later.
Okay, we'll table all of Articles 2 and 5.
And Article 5 has
Okay.
dozens of items in it
Yeah.
other than the permit, but again, let's just bring those articles back in a holistic
Okay.
fashion
I just
some
wanna
other
make sure.
day. That gets the sewer rule in place, gets the county's fire protection rule, and gets us moving forward with the main
Does it-
items we need
I was
done.
going to say, does that meet the standards of your September 1st deadline?
It gets the
for
conservation subdivision developments in Article 4 moving forward. Yes, sir. That would work perfectly.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to call the roll. The yes vote is to table sections 2 and 5 only.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
Articles
we'll
2 and
vote on
5.
some other things in a moment.
Yes. Okay. Waltrip,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Okay, now we're taking up the amendment that the county has passed to include the conservation districts.
Yes.
And so all of the county amendments.
And if I read this right, you now don't have to worry about the temporary use one, because we just now
correct.
tabled 5.3.3.
That's correct. So again, the county amendments are what we're voting on at this point to amend the original ordinance. And the county amendments generally have to do with water pressure.
Generally, section 1.13.
Yes.
Any questions on that?
The yes vote again is to
Support the
what the
amendment.
county did.
Yes.
We'll support what you've got left as amended
Yes.
with the county amendments.
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Denning,
Second.
By Nash.
I thought we already had that.
Yeah. No, this is the amendment we're voting on. So, all right, if there's no discussion, any more discussion, we'll call the roll.
Waltrip,
Yes.
Denning,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. And now the final vote on the amended ordinance that the
Yes.
county has passed with the exception of section 3 and 5.
Articles 2 and 5.
Articles
2 and 5, excuse me.
Yes,
Then
Final
a
vote.
yes vote will be to pass the ordinance
as amended
as amended.
with the county changes.
So moved.
No, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
We have a motion on that
Yeah. Need to
as
see a vote.
amended, so we're going directly to the vote this time.
Yes.
Okay. Did everybody understand? All right. Please call the roll.
Hadn't got a second.
We had a motion
right
and
now
a
for
second
you.
previously, and we voted on the amendment. Now we're voting on the amended motion.
Waltrip,
Yes.
Person drinking.
Denning,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Wilkerson.
Yes. That's the last item on our agenda, but we do have a closed session, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. No vote will be expected. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Thank you for coming.